to free opposition supporters who've been imprisoned in recent years for taking part in protests. The amnesty is aimed at ending the political turmoil that was triggered by President Macky Sall's decision to postpone last month's elections. The top story at 6 o'clock, President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially informed suspended Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe of his removal from office. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
Dream drafts the business. Passion takes it places because you are the business. Do business big with Telkom Business. Pieces of wood without a master carpenter are just that. You craft them into bespoke furniture because you are the business. Get unlimited LTE 10 megabits per second for 529 Rand per month from Telkom Business. The first 1,000 businesses to sign up to selected LTE and fiber deals will receive a free NSBC voucher worth 3,950 Rand. Add a Lalela inverter trolley from 295 Rand per month. Do business big. Call 10213 or click telkom.co.za. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines Soccer, Orlando Pirates facing a setback. They drew 1-1 against bottom team Cape Town Spurs ahead of the Soweto derby. And in rugby, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi is out for several weeks due to an injury, but could return against Ireland. Stay tuned for more details just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. News just reaching us of some potential unrest in the Tembisa area in terms of taxi provision this morning. There's been an incident, and what we're hearing is that taxis to Germiston, taxis to and from Joburg from Tembisa are likely to be disrupted. So details a little bit sketchy, but we'll keep you up to date with developments around Tembisa. But if you're looking for a taxi, it might be a bit difficult. Durban's M7 likely to be very busy through rush hour again this morning. You should come from Queensborough down through the roadworks at Bel Air up towards Chief Abalachile. It's a good time to be on the road from Pinetown through to the Bluff area now to avoid what will be an inevitability a little bit later this morning. Cape Town, if you commute on the Southern Line trains with Metro Rail, there's been a passenger-related incident in the Pardon Island area. Metro Rail saying Southern Line customers can expect plus 60-minute delays to their travels this morning. That's highly disruptive. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Nice to have you along. I don't know if you're in Gauteng or if you're in Uppington or if you're in Umlazi or if you've just had one of those nights where it's almost too hot to sleep. And I think for many people in Gauteng, that's been the experience. And I speak personally when I say that, not helped, of course, by the water problems that we've seen in big parts of Joburg. And I think it's just one of those moments when you sort of reflect on how difficult life is at the moment in so many different ways. Stage 4 load shedding last night. Now, no water in parts of Joburg, no water in other parts of the country too, of course. Issues in eThekwini yesterday. I was reflecting a little bit on that conversation we had with the eThekwini SAMWU regional leader. And when I kept asking him, is the strike over? Will your members go back to work? And all he would say was they'll go back to their workplaces. Wouldn't say that they would work. Well, the strike, it seems, continues. I thought I was losing my mind at one point yesterday during that conversation. But the strike does continue, and it seems that there's really no resolution to it. There are two big things that have happened overnight. And let me start with what will probably be the most important one. And it is our government going back to the International Court of Justice, as you heard in Madupi's bulletin there. And the statement from the presidency landing in my WhatsApp box after midnight, so really early this morning, saying, and this is the sort of statement saying South Africa's approached the International Court of Justice with an urgent application for provisional measures to be strengthened to prevent, here's the quote, a catastrophic famine in the Gaza Strip. They say that at least 15 children have died from starvation in Gaza alone. The actual number is believed to be much higher. The United Nations is is warning the number of deaths will increase exponentially unless military activities are halted and the blockade is lifted. So we're going back to the International Court of Justice and back to say, look, please, you need to do something. And I mean, this really is the sort of international issue of the moment, isn't it? And just, such an awful situation that we're seeing in Gaza. That's the one thing that happened overnight. The other thing that happened, this statement must have come through very late because I missed it before I went to bed, but it's from the ANC's WhatsApp group, their media group, saying that the ANC vehemently condemns the recent statements made by representatives of Jacob Zuma's Umkhonto we Sizwe party, which threaten violence against the Electoral Commission and undermine the foundations of our democracy. And you might have seen these statements. Visvan Reddy is one person who made comments. He said, for example, that if Umkhonto we Sizwe is not on the ballot, no South African will go to the polls. Spoke about he said there would be anarchy. He's not the only one. There have been other members of MK who have used similar language, and I've seen some of the videos of that. And it takes me to the sort of bigger question. I'll never forget Senzo Mqunu saying, sort of almost out of nowhere, when he spoke to us about a month ago now, Minister of Water Affairs, a man with great experience in KwaZulu-Natal in the ANC there, of course, when he was worried about security. And when we have comments like this, well, it does build on those fears, doesn't it? I suppose my question would probably be this. How do we deal with language like that, and how do we make sure that politicians don't spend the entire election using language like that? I mean, all the time we say to South Africans, we say to our children, this is how you must speak to each other. This is what you must do. And we have language like this and just, get very, very nervous about it in some cases. So I don't know how you're feeling about it this morning. But the Electoral Commission, I think, will condemn it. I think they've got a briefing tomorrow, and I'm sure they'll be asked lots of questions about it. The ANC condemning it. I'm sure other parties will too. And let's sort of see how it goes and what happens from there. Other issues, of course, going on at the moment. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has now implemented the decision by the National Assembly to remove John Hlophe from the position of Judge President of the Western Cape. So John Hlophe is no longer a judge as I speak to you now. And also Nkola Matata, also no longer a retired judge. So, was a judge, has retired, but is no longer a retired judge, if that makes any sense, as I understand it, which means he no longer gets the benefits. And both, of course, Hlophe and Matata become the first two people that's happened to in our democratic history, removed from their positions, so sort of ending that. One of the big stories yesterday was Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprises. He was talking about the Takatso deal. This is SAA and the idea that 51% of SAA will now be taken over by Takatso. And it's always going to be, if you think about it, it's always going to be controversial. It's a big privatization in a way, because Takatso will have operational control at 51%. They really will. And he really hitting out at people who sort of claimed that he has not behaved properly. There's been so much confidentiality about this. He says it's still a live transaction. And because it's commercially sensitive, the information has to be settled. And when he said a live transaction, I kind of wanted to say, you mean the transaction hasn't been perfected yet? If you know where I'm going with that. Anyway, so because the transaction hasn't been perfected and is still live, he says that all of this information can't be made public. And he says the parliamentary legal advisor said that he can do that he's doing the right thing. There's nothing untoward from what they can see. So that was his statement yesterday. I know there's been a lot of criticism about it. And the idea, I suppose, is the issue, as I understand the numbers, is that basically Takatso gets 51% of SAA for 51 Rand, but they have to put 3 billion Rand in it to make it work. That's the issue. That was a sort of strong series of statements by the minister yesterday. I told you yesterday about a sort of curious moment, a peculiar political moment around the EFF MP Naledi Chirwa. She was one of several EFF MPs who were not in the National Assembly for the hearing on the budget. And there was no sort of provision to do that virtually. You had to be there for that conversation about it, and she wasn't. Julius Malema said that he would take action against those MPs who were not there, and they would have to sort of pay a fine and apologize. And she said, she issued a letter on Twitter in which she said that she had not been there because her 4-month-old baby had fallen ill and she wanted to be with her baby. And I suppose who wouldn't? And I made the point that it's a kind of moment that tells you the lived experience of so many South Africans. And she also, I think, has to buy 2 gazebos as part of her apology. Well, Julius Malema went on Twitter yesterday, the leader of the EFF, and he said this: the Meta's inappropriate insinuations have forced our movement into a defensive stance, detracting our members from the immediate task of doing door-to-door because they must now defend their movement from rubbish. In situations where we must choose between an individual and the organisation, we must always prioritise the organisation. That's what he said on Twitter. I don't know if you have a sort of view on that, but I thought it was an interesting sequel to something I'd been telling you about a little earlier. I thought it was something that, something that we really should kind of look at and see how important that is. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting to see how it develops, and it is just a sort of insight into how difficult life is for so many people. I'm sure Madupi will have more on this for you, but the people accused of the murder of AKA and Tibbs Motswane, they'll be back in court again. And yesterday, they were in court yesterday, and the prosecutor is actually adding 2 more charges around money laundering. They faced charges of murder and attempted murder and illegal possession of a firearm, etc., but now facing charges of money laundering as well. And the question, of course, we keep going back to this, don't we, with this. Who funded it? We know the coordinator the police say they've got. We've got the spotters, they've got the drivers, they've got the shooters. Who was the person who funded it, and why? That's really the question, isn't it? Good to have you along this morning. Important developments, I think, around the International Court of Justice. Important developments, I thought, with that ANC statement around MK. Still no word, by the way, no official word from the ANC on what's happening with its list conference and meetings that they've been having to decide who will represent them in Parliament and the provincial legislatures. You know how to get in touch. Good to hear from you as always. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. Tweet us FM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice note to 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's 6:15.
Third-placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top 2 teams on the table, whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love You. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Let me tell you about my newest obsession. The formidable Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel. It's sophisticated, it's powerful. The silky smooth oomph of that 6-cylinder marvel took me by surprise. I felt invincible. Kilometers vanished. When I wasn't driving it, I was thinking about it, longing to return. Succumb to its powers. Experience the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel for yourself.
MasterChef, the biggest, most loved culinary TV show on the planet, is coming to S3. This fresh, local version of MasterChef South Africa will cook up a storm on S3 for the first time in 2024. Enter on www.masterchefsa.tv and start prepping for the opportunity to win R1 million and the prestigious title of Mzansi's new MasterChef. Entries close on the 15th of March. Channel the better you, only on S3. Open up.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Madupi Makhalamela, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. What's coming up today?
Great. We look at whether the parties have been able to meet the deadline and the conditions to contest the elections this year. Earlier, we heard Change Starts Now pulled out, and Bossa will announce its next move, given some of the conditions that they have not met. Now, speculation, Stephen, is that today at 10, Musi Maimane will announce that Bossa will be the second casualty of the IEC's signature requirements.
I mean, 15,000 signatures, I think it's a bit more than that, depending on where you're contesting.
Yeah.
What I don't get from these parties, and this is not a comment about Bossa or Change Starts Now, but others, but you know, they've had lots of time. I mean, the requirements have been spelt out for years. This is how it's always been.
Yes. And you would imagine that they would have made moves to ensure that, they get through. Anyway, opposition parties in Tshwane are outraged following a decision by Tshwane Mayor Celias Brink to rope in the Afrikaner political lobby group AfriForum to help with maintenance work around the capital city. Brink signed a corporate agreement with AfriForum earlier this week for community safety and maintenance partnerships.
I didn't see that, sheesh.
Yeah, and the ongoing municipal workers' strike is hitting public health care badly. Doctors and nurses at the Inkosi Albert Luthuli Hospital are battling without electricity for 3 days now. They say that generators are about to fail. Critical patients are being diverted to other healthcare centers. Those are just some of the stories that we'll be looking at. Grootes.
Thank you. All right, that's very serious in Etiquini. I hadn't thought of the electricity problems that hospital will have. It's an important hospital in that area, so you can imagine the issues there. And we've spoken before to medical professionals about trying to work, always sort of, imagine your child having someone putting stitches in by sort of cell phone light. Very scary. Madupi, thank you. You were there, SAFM, 19 minutes after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, partly cloudy, scattered afternoon showers and thundershowers, 19 and 32. Johannesburg, partly cloudy, scattered afternoon showers and thundershowers, 17 and 30. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, scattered afternoon showers and thundershowers, 19 and 31, 16 and 31. Bombela, cloudy, morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, isolated thundershowers late in the late afternoon, 20 and 32. Polokwane, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers, 21 and 34. Mahikeng, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon thundershowers, 17 and 34. Vryburg, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers, 15 and 36. Mangaung, fine, becoming partly cloudy, isolated thundershowers, 10 and 32. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 14 and 36. Uppington, partly cloudy, becoming fine, 16 and 36. Cape Town, partly cloudy, a light northwesterly wind, 16 and 24. George, fine, a light and variable wind, 14 and 24. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, becoming fine, a light northeasterly, 17 and 26. East London, partly cloudy, becoming fine in the evening, a light to moderate northeasterly, 17 and 28. Etiquini, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers, a fresh to strong southwesterly wind, 21 and 30. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers, a light to moderate southwesterly wind, 22 and 34. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers, 17 and 33.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks and relax to your favourite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
Two champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift the Day Walker against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka,
who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a two-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
21 minutes after 6. Well, while our government has gone to the International Court of Justice in another bid to try and stop the starvation of children and the genocide or potential genocide in Gaza, the International Criminal Court has now issued arrest warrants for two high-ranking Russian military leaders for their role in Ukraine. The two are accused of directing attacks at civilians and crimes against humanity. Russia says it doesn't recognize the warrants as it's not signed the Rome Statute, which would give the International Criminal Court jurisdiction over Russia. Roland Henwood's a political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. Roland, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
We've already seen the International Criminal Court bringing charges against the Russian President Vladimir Putin and several others in Russia. Now there are these charges. Does it really change anything for the court to do this?
It does not really change anything. But it does confirm the process and the procedures underway. And we must remember that the ICC has not been engaged in the conflict in Ukraine since this year only. They started already in 2015 with formal investigations. And they've got a team there basically at the request of the Ukrainian government to investigate serious human rights atrocities and at this stage also war crimes. So it's not a new issue. It's not something that has not been taking place for quite some time. It's just the way in which the court functions. It actually takes some time. And then the other dimension here is that there's a warrant, but there's no court case at this stage, and there cannot be a court case until the people are actually tried in court physically. The ICC cannot prosecute people in absentia. So it's a long process, and if ever it comes to an actual court court case, that remains to be seen. It will require the involvement of other role players to actually physically arrest people and deliver them to the court. If that does not happen, it's going to be basically a charge against the name of somebody, but nothing more is going to come of that.
The obvious point to make, especially this morning with our actions at the International Court of Justice, is that the International Criminal Court seems happy to prosecute Russians for their actions in Ukraine. It's done nothing, as far as I know, to prosecute Israelis or Israeli leaders for what's happening in Gaza, and cases have been brought there.
Yes, cases have been brought, but again, the same applies to Israel. It's not a signatory, so it does not accept what happens, and then someone must actually arrest people and deliver them, and they must be specific individuals. And that's one of the key differences between the ICC and the ICJ, that you are prosecuting specific individuals. In other words, you must link a person, a leader, to a particular act that you are investigating, an atrocity or a war crime. And so that's a very different approach to what happens. Interestingly, that Palestine is a member of the ICC. So there's also the option of actually opening a process which does not seem to have really been used at this stage.
So, I mean, obviously you're correct that Israel's not a signatory to the ICC like Russia, but the ICC is still issuing arrest warrants for Russians and not for Israelis. And I mean, if you look at what's happening around the world, the conversation around what's happening in Gaza, the actions of our government at the International Court of Justice, of course, the two courts. But is there a risk that the ICC is being seen really as a sort of tool of the West in Russia, does nothing about Israel?
There is that perception. It's quite a strong perception, especially in Africa. The first cases that were all from cases that took place on the African continent. Hence the pushback from Africa that it's an anti-African court. Of course, the issue here is that you are prosecuting individuals for grave abuses. And if there's a case, there can be an investigation. You fulfill the requirements. And we saw that play out. One of the very few instances where a head of state was actually charged and based on the investigations, there was a warrant of arrest, was Omar al-Bashir of Sudan. And there's no question. There's another dimension, though, and that is the ICC will not get involved and cannot get involved if there is a domestic judicial process that is underway. In other words, if Sudan acted against al-Bashir, which is happening now, he's actually in custody, the ICC will put on hold its process. If Sudan is not willing to prosecute, and that's going to be the case, for instance, in Russia, it will probably be the case in Israel. One would have to see, is there a willingness to prosecute the Prime Minister, for instance? If there is that willingness, then the ICC will not prosecute, will not continue with its case.
Roland Henwood, always appreciate the time. Thank you, political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. We're all sorts of developments around the international judicial system at the moment. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Orlando Pirates, they must be frustrated.
Yeah, what a painful draw for them just before they go into the derby this weekend. 1-1 the score against Cape Town Spurs. Despite an early lead from Relebohile Mofokeng, the Buccaneers couldn't secure the win, ending the match in a stalemate after a controversial penalty decision. Now, the Cape Town Spurs coach Ernst Middendorp just pleased with the 1 point against Orlando Pirates.
I think so far with our structure set up with the right dynamic, we have seen, I believe, a good performance. To sum it up, each and everybody contributed. If it is Neil Boshoff or Bradley Bralani in the end of the day, or Boitomelo or everybody, I think we have seen excellent wingbacks today.
More soccer action from the PSL. Sekhukhune United, they've edged past Royal AM with a 1-0 victory in their latest DStv Premiership encounter. It all happened at Peter Mokaba Stadium. Now, this propelled Sekhukhune to 7th place on the log. Meanwhile, Royal AM struggles continue, leaving them precariously close to the relegation zone. In the meantime, Stellenbosch FC got the better of their neighbours Cape Town City to continue a great campaign for the team from from the Winelands. Stellies claimed a 1-0 win away to City after Devon Titus struck just after the half-hour mark to secure a league double over their rivals and also push themselves up to second place on the table. Over to Europe, Manchester City making strides into the Champions League quarterfinals, outplaying Copenhagen 3-1. That was the scoreline, securing a confident 6-2 aggregate. Erling Haaland once again finding the net and keeping Manchester City's European dreams alive. Now, closer to home, the World Cup winning Captain Siya Kolisi has revealed that he had an operation on his right hand and it went well. The double World Cup winner was posing in hospital in France. It's Kolisi's second surgery in less than 12 months. Last year, he partially tore his anterior cruciate ligament, and that was during a match for the Sharks, and made a near miracle recovery to lead the Boks to a fourth World Cup title in France. Meanwhile, his Bok teammate Cheslin Colby is also on the sidelines. The hot stepper missed the Suntory Sun Goliaths last match, and that was in Japan's League One this past weekend. But the clubs will obviously give a statement and will keep you updated on the progress. And finally, golf. 19-year-old South African protege, Coughlin Kira Floyd, who took to the sport quite late, well, she has come through and done exceptionally well in the first round of the Ladies' Challenge at the Blue Valley Golf Estate. Now, she has won as well the Benoni Country Club Ladies' Championship. She won that at the age of 9, finished third in the Sunshine Tour Ladies' Jabra Classic, age 14, and went on to win the South African Women's Stroke Play Championship in 2022. All these stories and more will come to you at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, more on the situation regarding Joburg's water in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Stage 2 now. Stage 4 from 8 o'clock tonight, 6:30.
A very good morning with the news headlines. Ke Mudupi Makhalemele. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, who is also an ANC NEC member, says he will not comment on which political party the ANC may go into coalition with in the upcoming elections. President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially informed suspended Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe of his removal from office. And the Gauteng Health Department says 5 nurses from the Steve Biko Academic Hospital in Pretoria have been placed on precautionary suspension following allegations of gross negligence. Details of these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Taxi services across the Ekurhuleni region may be disrupted this morning. We're starting to get lots of sort of reports coming in from multiple sort of sources about multiple locations right across Ekurhuleni due to some issues. So commuters in that region, that part of Gauteng, should be prepared to perhaps use alternative transport. The taxi you're looking for that you normally take may not be arriving this morning. More details on that as it becomes available. Olifant Sortain out of Midrand, already heavy through the N1 and down towards Pretoria Main Road. There's been some real traffic light issues plaguing that run through for the longest time. Eskian Pathali into Marabastad. That's busy if you're driving into central Pretoria, already queuing back towards Van der Hof, very heavy through the Marabastad part. Durban's M7 still moving okay. It will get busy again from Pine down through to the Bluff in that section between Queensborough and Bel Air Road. It's a good time to be on the road if you want to avoid those delays. The earlier you go, the better. And Cape Town, a collision in front of Khayelitsha. It's the N2 inbound by the R300. That has pushed traffic already back through Spine Road and working back towards Baden Powell and looking particularly heavy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
The fact that the grants are used to meet various needs within a family and I guess to some degree support families beyond just the older person, surely that speaks to a need that needs to be addressed within community and within society.
There's different ways of looking at this. The first time you can say we all know, and advocacy groups for a long time I've been saying that the child support grant, for example, is just not enough. It's, as you know, 500 rand. It barely covers food for the child, let alone school fees, school transport, clothes, etc., etc. So similarly with the social relief distress grant, and that's a temporary grant, as we know. You know, the future of that is a bit unclear, although we all know what we would hope for. That at a fairly low, 350 rand level is not even meeting any kind of transport costs for people trying to look for work, people trying to gain employment, etc., and covering their own costs.
Professor Eleanor Moore.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM. The Business Update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning. How are you doing?
Hi there.
Asian markets and US markets, how are they looking?
Well, both markets are down across the board this morning. The investors are reacting to the testimony by U.S. Central Bank Chair Jerome Powell before lawmakers about interest rates. Powell has raised the possibility of an interest rate cut from June this year, and investors are now questioning by what percentage will interest rates be cut. So before the U.S. market opens later today, the U.S. futures market is down. Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each down 0.3%. In the Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 0.5%. China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.2%, and Japan's Nikkei is down 1%. And in the currency market, there is some strength in the dollar against the rand. The local currency is 1883.
And business confidence starting the year on a weak footing, and I suppose it's no surprise.
Yeah, business confidence levels have dropped in the first few months of this year. This means that more business owners are feeling pessimistic about the state of the economy and the state of their finances. Eskom blackouts, high interest rates, and inflation are to blame for business owners feeling pessimistic. The Bureau for Economic Research and Rand Merchant Bank measure business confidence levels through an index, and this index fell by 1 point so far this year. Business owners in sectors that depend on electricity, such as manufacturing, construction, and retail, are more pessimistic. And we know that when business owners feel pessimistic, they tend to not invest in the economy or create new jobs.
And Nedbank says the peak of consumers defaulting on debt repayments has passed, really?
The Nedbank says fewer consumers are defaulting on home and vehicle loan repayments. Many consumers have defaulted on loan repayments because interest rates have increased by nearly 5 percentage points since November 2021. The bank believes that the worst is over when it comes to debt defaults by consumers. Outgoing Nedbank CEO Mike Brown says consumers are becoming accustomed to the high interest rate environment, and they are reaching out to banks to make payment arrangements when they struggle to make debt repayments or face a tough financial situation.
Ray Machlaka, thank you very much. Ray, of course, back in an hour's time. All business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
The Senegalese President Macky Sall now scheduling presidential elections for March the 24th, few weeks' time.
Stephen, this is few weeks down. We are counting almost 2 weeks from now. And you'll understand, Stephen, yesterday he had to do that because the Constitutional Council ruled that what the National Dialogue Commission came for with the new date of June 2 was not in line with the Constitution. He had to also last night what you can call reshuffle his Prime Minister Amadou Ba with the Interior Minister Sidiki Kaba, so that Amadou Ba can now focus on electoral campaign. And finally, also Stephen, last night he also approved an amnesty law that will now ease the tension of those people who have been protesting, but this also has been tracked for 3 years ago. Those who have been protesting against Macky Sall, now they'll be given what we call blanket amnesty. So Senegal is going for the elections come Sunday 24 March 2024.
And then in Sudan, the United Nations Security Council, they might call for an immediate cessation of hostilities ahead of Ramadan.
Stephen, this is coming from the UN Security Council, and the government of Britain is busy working or penning down the draft resolution that they will put for tomorrow before the UN Security Council to call for this, what they call to call all parties to ensure the removal of any obstruction, enable full, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access. So when you look at this text, Stephen, it's all about calling for cessation of hostilities with immediate effect, considering the spiritual religious festival of the Muslim community, which is Ramadan. As we know, Stephen, there have been many crises, there have been many conflicts in the north part of Africa, but Sudan has been facing the West since April 15, 2023.
And then in Rwanda now, it seems, is asking the African Union not to support troops from SADC. That's in the DRC. Our soldiers are part of that.
Stephen, that is quite true, but this is not for the first time Rwanda is doing what I called this diplomatic note verbals, either through the back door or the front door. What has come forth now, Stephen, is that the Rwanda Foreign Affairs Minister, Vincent Biruta, has engaged Musa Faki to say that they've learned with great concern that there's a scheduled meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council, which they have to look at its support to the SADC mission in the DRC. Now, the government of Rwanda is still accusing the DRC army to be supporting the other rebel groups in this conflict. They are still also saying that the SADC mission in the DRC is not impartial. Hence, they are calling for this, that the AU must not authorize the funding. Like I said before, Stephen, they've been doing this clandestine diplomatic note verbals. Even to the UN Security Council, they've taken it there to say the UN, as they are pulling out MONUSCO phase by phase, this will not support the SADC mission in the DRC.
And then EFF leader Julius Malema, he's in Nigeria this morning.
Stephen, he has landed in Lagos yesterday for the Obafemi Aloha Prize ceremony. Who will be the recipient? It appears it is his friend, the esteemed president of the Africa Development Bank Group, Dr. Adeseni, who will be receiving, who have received this award last night in Lagos. Stephen, President Samia Sulu was the chair of that Obafemi or lower prize for leadership in Nigeria. So Dr. Adeseni was given this prize, Stephen, based on his exemplary leadership, dedication to what they call socio-economic development of the African continent. These are very, we can call, Stephen, foreign diplomatic visit of Julius Malema from attending the inauguration of President Joseph Boakai in the last month, and also going to Kenya, now going to Nigeria. It shows that the foreign policy of the opposition party, EFF, is now grounded in the African continent.
And then you're taking us all the way back to the 7th of March, 1921.
Stephen, he will have been 103 years old now, from Komani in Queenstown, was born on this day. We're talking of first black journalist to work for Drama magazine. He wrote the musical King Kong, and he also was a newscaster and the producer for Zambian Broadcasting Corporation. We are talking about Tozama Todd Machikiza, who was born on this day, Stephen. Asante Sana, as we're still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Human Rights Month.
Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. Russ Advocate back, of course, with us tomorrow morning from our continent through the day, 18 minutes to 7.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, good to hear from you this morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Calls coming through this morning. Some of them about party signatures. Things to talk about, of course, around the ANC condemning the use of inflammatory, I suppose, violent rhetoric, language by members of MK. I was interested in the ANC's choice of words. They said Jacob Zuma's Umkhonto weSizwe party. I thought that was interesting. Voice notes coming through on that and other issues as well. Zwelake on the line from Mangalung. Zwelake, hi. This issue around signatures for political parties that are registered for the elections. Go for it.
Yeah, morning, Stephen. And I heard you and Midupi earlier saying that unrepresented parties had ample time to come address this issue of signatures. But I beg to differ from that, because you would recall that the president amended the law on 17th of April 2003, and that was immediately followed by the court application by the independent candidate, which is judgment Concord issued in December, when IEC itself now was crying foul to say that for them to prepare better, then they needed to kind of have an understanding around that. And then you look into that, and then the audit itself came out, the Rivonia cycle took the matter to court. There was a great uncertainty around as to whether with unrepresented political parties also, like a juristic person, if one were to put it, would they go into a similar vein to that of independent candidate or go into 1,000 signatures? It was unfortunate that last week, Monday, if not fortnight ago, the Concord then decided not to roll the matter before the election. And IEC itself was not even certain as to how to approach this matter, because I remember, you would recall that I'm a member of unrepresented political party, African Alliance of Social Democrats. Then on January 22nd, it's only then we as parties understood how this thing was going to happen.
So Laka, I hear you on all of that, but why did some of the new parties, why have some of them been able to do it and some haven't? I mean, okay, Rivonia Circle, I think, has a relationship, if I've understood it correctly, with Rise Mzansi. Rise Mzansi got the number of signatures. Bosa did not. Change Starts Now did not. So, I mean, it seems to me if you're going to start a political party and you're going to win a significant number of votes in South Africa, then you need to have campaign structure, and you need to start by getting the signatures. And if you can't get the signatures, you can't campaign. You can't take part.
Correct, Stephen. Others are media-hard political parties like your boss or your Change South Africa. Unlike us, we are able to kind of, and we are certain that we know for a fact that we'll be contesting the Free State legislature. We just uploaded, starting yesterday, the regional ones for national. We're certain that by end of business tomorrow, we will have reached that, because our team is doing utmost back to see to it. But unfortunately, cannot bring about the limitation to a right that is enshrined in the Constitution, that a party, one has a right to join as political party. I find the judiciary in this instance having buckled itself to say that the 15% threshold, even if I were to go and contest and get one vote, it's neither here nor there. But that's a right that is enshrined in the Constitution. The unfair limitation, according to me, it's really boggling around. Okay. And the strategy in terms of campaigning, they differ from political party A to B. You will find that, for instance, in this one, Change South Africa will have relied mainly on yourselves as media houses, because you have had these political parties more than any other thing. And parties like ourselves that will be doing door-to-door, will be campaigning. So it is neither here nor there. Even those that will have achieved the nature as is, then they would have not
Zolaka, we
out to potentially get the better results like Bosa or Change South Africa would go.
Zolaka, I think we've heard you on this, and okay, I mean, let's see. I don't know about that. I think it's a perfectly legitimate requirement. Other voice notes coming through on this on 0614 104 107.
This is Derek from Klanga. Morning, Stephen. Talking about these parties that have to register 1,500 votes by a particular date. I think the big problem is that they were under the impression they could do it online. However, it has to be physical signatures, and that's where the deadline becomes a problem.
All right, maybe. 14 minutes now to 7.
Eskom understands that electricity is an integral part of running a business. However, electricity demand is currently higher than supply, and energy efficiency is critical. Businesses are encouraged to reduce consumption between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. by not leaving electrical equipment on standby mode, as well as turning off unnecessary lighting. We can reduce load shedding by working together. Every kilowatt counts.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Third placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top two teams on the table. Whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Well, Joburg Water says it's going to take several days for the water system covering major parts of Joburg to recover from that electricity outage at the Aikenhof pumping station this week. An explosion in a transformer left the station without power. That means it could not pump water for a period and then could only pump at 50% capacity. It's pumping at full capacity now. But reservoirs run dry. Because the consumption of water is so high, it's difficult to fill them up when people are still using the water. Nombuso Shabalala is the spokesperson for Johannesburg Water. Nombuso, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and thanks for having us.
How long do you think it'll take for the whole system to recover?
So we estimate that it will take a couple of days. However, we have seen some improvements in some of the areas that were affected. So the systems that were affected were mainly around Soweto, Randburg, Roodepoort, Johannesburg South and Central. So as of yesterday, we've seen improvements in Soweto, our commando system, which is Brixton, Crosby and Hurstville, and some parts of Roodepoort. But we are keeping an eye on Randburg as it has not recovered quite adequately yet.
Why do some areas recover more quickly than others? And I say this as someone who lives in Randburg.
So, Stephen, it's because areas that are high-lying areas would typically recover later than areas in the low-lying areas. So if you're in a high-lying area, you would recover later than someone in a low-lying area because water follows gravity.
Sure.
So that's why people in high-lying areas would recover later than people in low-lying areas.
So would sort of by Sunday be an accurate prediction, do you think? I mean, do you think things will be back to normal by Sunday?
I would think so, Stephen, because we have seen improvements since yesterday, and projections last night were that overnight we were expecting to see more improvements this morning. So Sunday we expect more areas to have recovered from the Aikenhof pump station challenges.
In the meantime, you're trying to supply some areas with water tankers, and I know that's expensive and difficult. Do you have enough water tankers to supply the areas without water?
I think we can never have enough water tankers, Stephen, because resources are a challenge. But for this challenge, as an intervention, we have deployed 27 water tankers to affected areas for emergency water supply, and we have prioritized hospitals and clinics and old age homes. So as some areas recover, those water tankers are then deployed to areas that are still recovering. But in total, we have 27 water tankers to supply the affected areas that I mentioned earlier.
It must be very difficult when this happens, and we all have sort of sympathy for Joburg Water when this happens. The problem, of course, is we don't want it to happen again, and I realise City Power are the people in charge of the transformer. But is there any kind of redundancy that can be installed so that when this happens, when you have an electrical problem in this way, you can still pump water? And we all know the demands in Joburg are only going to increase.
So the challenge, Stephen, is that the treatment and distribution of water is highly reliant on electricity. And as Joburg Water, we rely on pumps and motors to get water to the residents. So in this instance, it was a City Power substation that affected a Rand Water pump station, which in turn affected our systems. I do know that at a high level, Rand Water and City Power, or the City of Johannesburg, are talking about what mitigation plans they can put in place so that when something like this happens, municipalities like Johannesburg are cushioned a bit. But as I mentioned, the treatment and distribution of water is really reliant on electricity.
Nombuso Shabalala, thank you. Spokesperson for Johannesburg Water, 8 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Taxi strike across the Ekurhuleni region of Gauteng. Taxi disruption from Tembisa down through Germiston, out through Daveyton, through Katlehong as well. It is widespread. If you rely on taxis across the Ekurhuleni region, it's unlikely that they're going to come. And anecdotally, there is a bit more traffic around Ekurhuleni this morning as well. Whether that's taxis taking a protest and blockage to the roads, or whether it's just extra commuter volumes, we will keep an eye on things there. But no taxis, few and far between across the region, and a bit of extra traffic in the area as well. The N1 South already backlogging out of Pretoria to Joburg, going to sit from Brockfontein down towards the New Road exit. The N4 coming in off the Emelafeni Highway in towards Hatfield and Pretoria. That's queuing up through Watermeyer down towards the M1. It's been a busy week for N4 traffic. Now, Durban, couple of standouts. One is the M7. That is now queuing from Queensborough down to Bel Air and Wakesley. Wakesley Road up to Bel Air, very heavy as well. Roadworks in that area causing the problems. And a crash at the top of Fields Hills at the M13 from Hillcrest. Very slow as you come in towards the Kloof area. Today, Cape Town, a collision N2 driving inbound just by the R300. I think this is the a second collision on that section since about 6 o'clock this morning, so it is heavy. Passing Kylie, the queue starts halfway between Baden Powell and the Spine Road exit. And Marine Drive again this morning, just slow to Racecourse Road, and then some roadworks which are catching you out in a secondary queue on Marine Drive along the coast towards Woodbridge Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thomas, it's been a while. My glasses were getting dirty. Good morning.
Steve, I mean, you've been trying over and over to get through for some reason. I was even thinking you guys are barring the likes of us, but thanks for taking my call.
Sure. All right, the signatures for political parties. Go for it.
Steve, if I were to offer the advice to these guys, if I may, for what it's worth, is maybe they should just stop worrying and complaining and putting this or the other and just declare which guys they would support and consolidate, and it will help the electorate in that we will not have a lot of names in the ballot. Yes. I mean, the IFP and the DA, for instance, would be a good example. Where the DA is strong, the IFP would not campaign, and vice versa, in the case that they exist. That would be had to be. And it seemed to work. There's no noise, there's no nothing. And we would know in any case if the guys are doing this as a career to be employed or they're doing it for the love of South Africa. You know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you. It's very interesting because it seems to me that, that if you're serious about contesting for politics, you're going to do this seriously in some way. And I don't know if people are doing this seriously.
To me, the thing is this. I mean, the guys like Musi, they had time to take the IEC and whoever else to court.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, if you had time to do all those things, surely with the knowledge, and he was in the leading opposition at some stage, he knew what's needed. And he must have had a plan. But that's beside the point right now. It's what's under the bridge. Why not just move ahead, keep South Africa sane, don't cause unnecessary ruckus, this, that, and the other.
Sure.
Just declare who you're going to join, and let's get the ball rolling.
Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thank you. 7:04.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Well, yesterday, the Limpopo Finance MEC, Siaparo Sekwati, delivering his budget. He says, and the provincial government say, the economic situation in Limpopo is improving. But the MEC saying the construction sector in Limpopo has not bounced back from COVID-19, and some sectors are battling to improve as well. Saviko Mabunda is the secretary of the Forum for Limpopo Entrepreneurs, a business group there. Saviko, good morning.
Good morning, Steve, and all the listeners of SAFM.
What do you think needs to happen for the economy in Limpopo to improve? What will it take to get Limpopo going again?
Steve, I would like to give you this scenario that people in Limpopo will be poor and poorer because of the corruption that is happening in this province. We don't have a budget speech in this province. It's just a formality. Because the minute the MEC of Treasury allocate the budget to each and every department, before the budget speech, the powers that may be in this province will call all the MECs to a certain secret corner. They start to award, to pre-award tenders to corrupt business people that will serve their evil, corrupt tendencies. And when they go and do this budget speech, already the money has been allocated to corrupt business people.
Saviko, that's a big accusation to make. Do you have evidence of that?
Number one, let me talk about the three top departments that have got the top budget in the province. Number one, Department of Health. They awarded a perishables tender. We went to court as a forum that this tender was awarded in a very wrongful manner. The judge awarded on our favor that it must be cancelled. The MSC of Health and the HOD go and counter us, appeal, and they lost the appeal. After losing the appeal, they continue the perishables tender after the judge is given an award. Worst part of it, the very same tender of perishables is doing the delivery in Johannesburg from Limpopo. The ones that the judge they said they must be recalled, and they're charging people amounts in the Department of Health in Gauteng. Secondly, we're talking about court tender at health. What happens about that court tender? More than 250 business people bidded for that tender. They go, the chairman of the bid committee, go and form what we call price adjust committee, which was compiled by senior managers of the department. They pick up 14 companies. They give them that tender without adjudicating, without evaluating. And those people that are delivering coal to hospital that doesn't have boilers. Last week, as I'm speaking, when the Department of Health realized that there is a budget speech, they pick up 5 companies to do upgrade in hospitals from the panel of contractors. They were afraid to make a tender. They pick up 3 hospitals, they give it to one company, worth 88 million.
Okay, so you've given us those examples, but surely then, and I appreciate that you won that court ruling, the thing is to go and lay criminal charges. Are you doing that?
No, okay. Now you came with a good fact. Number one, the PPEs in Ed Health, the SIU came and investigate about the PPE scandals at Health. They gave a ruling that those people must go to court processes, they must have to recoup that money. What did the department do? They went out and go to a certain lawyer in this province to say they want advice. This lawyer wrote one sentence, follow the proposal of the SIU. They paid that lawyer 16 million. They never followed that recommendation of the SIU. All they did was to give these people letters of we are giving warnings, final warnings. How will they recoup those millions when they give their final warnings?
Okay, Saviko Mabunda, thank you. Secretary of the Forum for Limpopo Entrepreneurs. A series of claims made there. I think we need to get in touch with the Limpopo MEC for Finance, Siaparo Sekoati, and give him a chance to reply. We're doing that in the next day or so, maybe today if we can. You with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top story is Sawa Godongwana refuses to be dragged into coalition talks, and Judge Hlophe informed of his removal from office. A very good morning to you. We start with election news. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, who is also an ANC-NEC member, says he will not comment on which political party the ANC may go into coalition with in the upcoming elections. He made the comments during a sit-down interview with our news desk. Godongwana says the ANC will go into the upcoming elections with the intention of winning an outright majority.
That's career limiting. Mbalula will fire me if I answer that question, because Mbalula's view and the ANC is that we should not be discussing that. We should be discussing the fact that we are going to have an overwhelming majority in the elections on the 29th of May. But I've outlined to you for municipalities or provinces, if those things can happen, what kind of criteria from where I sit we would like.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially informed suspended Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe of his removal from office. This follows the National Assembly's recent impeachment vote, which saw 305 MPs voting in favor of his removal and 27 against. This makes Hlophe the first judge to be impeached since the dawn of democracy, and he loses all his benefits and pension. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
President Ramaphosa has, in accordance with Section 1772 of the Constitution, removed Judge President Mandla Hlophe of the Western Cape Division of the High Court from judicial office. The action follows the National Assembly resolution to remove Judge Hlophe as stipulated in Section 1771B of the Constitution.
The Gauteng Health Department says 5 nurses from the Steve Biko Academic Hospital in Pretoria have been placed on precautionary suspension following allegations of gross negligence. This after a video emerged last month of a 28-year-old male left unattended at the hospital's emergency unit. The man has since died. Here's the department spokesperson, Mutalatala Mudiba.
The employees have since been suspended to allow for further investigation into the incident. The facility management continues to engage the affected family to enable redress processes to unfold. Counseling services have also been offered to the family.
Residents of Silobela in Carolina, Mpumalanga have raised concerns over the quality of water they consume. They allege that the water is not clean and the Chief Albert Luthuli municipality is unable to improve the water quality. Sewage and acid drainage water are allegedly spilling into the Bosmansspruit Dam. The court ordered the municipality improve the quality of the water in 2012. To date, though, nothing has happened. The residents are forced to buy water for their use. The CEO of the Eco Green Environmental Group, Eddie Zita, says they've been experiencing this challenge since 2012.
Since from 2012, we're experiencing water contamination from the side of municipality, also the side of the mines. On the side of the mine is acid mine drainage. On the side of the municipality is sewer drainage spillage that is coming from the manholes that we experience all the time, which is around Carolina and the nearby town.
And South Africa has again submitted a request to the ICJ to examine whether additional provisional measures are required to protect Palestinians caught up in the Israeli-Hamas war in Gaza. Our correspondent, Sharon Bryce-Peace.
South Africa is for the second time asking the court to modify its provisional measures and to indicate additional provisional measures, further asking the court to clarify the previous 6 orders that were granted against Israel. Pretoria submitted that this was necessary and essential in light of what it calls the exigent circumstances facing Palestinians in Gaza and to respond to what it views as Israel's continuing violations of and contempt of the court's order and decisions. South Africa says it fears that this latest application may be the last opportunity that the court may have to save the Palestinian people in Gaza, already dying of starvation, and who are now, according to the UN, one step away from famine. Shervin Bryce-Peace, SABC News, New York.
The top story, the Sawa Finance Minister Enoch Kotongwana, who is also an ANC NEC member, says he will not comment on which political party the ANC may go into coalition with in the upcoming elections. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemeli.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, soccer. Orlando Pirates facing a disappointing draw ahead of the Soweto Derby, leaving fans anxious, while Manchester City's Pep Guardiola boasts about their rightful place amongst Europe's football elite. Catch the full story here just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're just joining us, a reminder, taxi services heavily disrupted across the Ekurhuleni region from Tembisa down through Katlehong out to Daveyton and Germiston and pretty much all points in between. If you rely on taxis across Ekurhuleni, it's unlikely they're going to come along this morning. Malabongwe, North riding to Stratham Park, heading very slowly into Randburg today. And the N1 route is solid, busier than normal with queues between the Brockfontein interchange and the New Road exit at this stage. Crossing to Durban, a crash at the top of Fields Hill. It's on the M13. There's a big backlog as you come on from Old Main Road at Hillcrest and go very slowly through Gillets and Maytime past the golf course and on towards the Fields Hill and the top of the hill area. Cape Town's Marine Drive queuing now from Bayside Mall down towards Sunset Beach. And then you got the roadworks further in at Woodbridge Island causing a secondary queue and quite a heavy backlog on the N2 coming into Cape Town passing Kylie. Turns a crash by the R300 pushing traffic back halfway between Spine Road and Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. We'll focus on energy and gas for the next 10 minutes or so. We'll hear from government about the gas master plan, hear from business as well. And then Obed Bapela, he's the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises. But speaking to him this morning in his position as Deputy Chair of the ANC's Subcommittee on International Relations, we'll talk to him about this case being brought, the request for more provisional measures by our government at the International Court of Justice around Gaza. Big developments on that overnight.
Introducing a collection of Audi Black and Urban Special Edition models crafted for the bold and curated for the progressive. From the sporty Audi S3 and elegant A4 to the distinctive Q2 and Q3, each vehicle has been created to be an extension of your identity. Style, design, comfort and technology is yours to own with a guaranteed future value and a competitive monthly installment through Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.za to discover more.
Mzansi's top spinners are back on the ground for a tire-screeching battle.
Here we go. You ready for some fun?
Stay glued to SABC TV channels on 16 March 2024 for a breathtaking experience of Red Bull Shine Moto.
Precision driving at its very best out here. This is Africa. Welcome to a world of spinning.
Do not miss out on the heated spinning by the greats of the sport. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
9 minutes after 7, good morning. The Minister for Mineral Resources and Energy, Gwede Mantashe, saying this week there is a gas master plan that's going to Cabinet to ensure industry does not run out of natural gas in 2 years' time. Sasol has said it will switch off its gas pipeline from Mozambique in 2026 because the supplies in that area are running out. The Industrial Gas Users Association says thousands of jobs will be lost. Whole industries could have to close if the situation is not sorted out by then. Makosonke Buthelezi is the Head of Communications in the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Makosonke, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
So we have the gas master plan. I realise it needs to go through Cabinet, but how would it stop this disaster from happening? What measures would be implemented?
Look, the gas master plan is is looking at the medium to long term availability of gas and the demand thereof. It is not going to solve the immediate crisis, so to speak, as you've outlined them. However, there are interventions to look into this potential supply of gas, and one of them is that there is a task team led by DTIC. We sit in that task team and some of the key role players from the private sector to look at strategies, to address the potential scarcity of gas for industrial users. And over and above that, I think the minister alluded to signing off an MOU with the Mozambican government to ensure that they supply us with gas from their resources. And the Central Energy Fund has also entered into a sales agreement with their counterpart in Mozambique to also make sure that there is a supply of gas into the country.
Okay, we need some urgency on this. I mean, are these measures going to work? We've only got 2 years, and gas is something that requires investment. It requires careful management. It's not something we can just click our fingers. So are things moving quickly?
Yeah, definitely. That is why all these measures are in appreciation of moving with speed, and these agreements and all these sitting down with the stakeholders to look into how quick can we really come with solutions so that we beat the time that we have. We use the time that we have to ensure that there's continued supply of gas into the country.
Why has it taken so long to get to this point? I mean, haven't we been told for years that this gas pipeline would switch off in 2026? From what I can see, I'm not in the industry, it looks like very little or nothing was done.
Look, this was an issue. It's an issue between Sasol and its suppliers. And in fact, what is actually happening is that Sasol has indicated, what we gathered from this indaba is that Sasol and its customers, they have been aware about the possibility of the reduction of reserves of gas from Mozambique. And Sasol said to its customers, look, by 2026, we're going to reduce supply to you guys. We're going to use the supply as a feedstock for ourselves. So, and I think they've been aware all along, Sasol and its customers. And what we gathered is that the customers were looking at Sasol to come up with a solution, as their supplier. So it's something. It's not really something that is new and that has caught them by surprise.
I saw some reports that in the minister's speech, and he was speaking at the African Energy Summit, which is underway, I think, in Cape Town, he said business mustn't be, did he use the phrase, like a crying baby when things go wrong? It must be involved in finding solutions. Did he say that, a crying baby?
He basically says if there is a crisis, all of us should not throw our hands in the air. We must all come up with a solution. Hence, there is this task team. We must come to the table and say, this is in our interest to resolve these issues. We mustn't look at each other and stand on the sideline and say, you are responsible for this, you're going to have to sort it out. Let's come together and come up with a solution to solve the crisis that we are facing as a country.
Makosonko Buthelezi, thank you. Head of Communications in the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. You were there, SFM. It's just gone 7:15. Busi Mavuso is the CEO at Business Leadership South Africa. Busi, good morning. For all of this to work, we would need a constructive relationship between the private sector and government in this gas situation. Is there a constructive relationship there?
Stephen, we have been trying to talk to DMRE for quite some time, and if you listen to the Industrial Gas Users Association, they will tell you how since 2019 they've been unsuccessfully engaging government on the solutions and required role of government. And there have been engagements initiated by industry with government seeking possible solutions, but all of those have been unsuccessful. There have been 2 separate applications to import LNG, and install the required infrastructure since 2010. So that is 14 years ago. And both applications were opposed by NESA. So the minister must just admit that we're actually caught napping. I listened to him at the Africa Energy Indaba, and he talks about presenting a gas master plan to cabinet. They haven't done it yet, Stephen. They are still going to present a gas master plan to cabinet. He makes reference to an MOU with Mozambique government that is yet to be signed. He speaks about Petro SA that has applied for a trading license to NESA. So clearly, there's nothing in place. We knew that at some point we were going to have to put plans in place to make sure that we can do this, but nothing has been done. Everything that is talking about the solutions is something that is yet to be done. So clearly, they didn't do what they need to do, and that is a problem, because when you look at the direct impact of this, it's really going to make a bad situation worse. It's going to further plunge our economy into a crisis that we are actually already facing. So what happened here is that government has failed, due to a combination of policy inaction and inability to commit to large-scale investment needed to create an alternative infrastructure. And now we face an almost inevitable supply interruption. And that is where we're sitting as a country right now.
You say almost inevitable. What's it going to take to avert that? And I mean, maybe people can put pressure on Sasol, maybe people can ask Mozambique, but I don't know if that's going to make much difference.
And that's the thing, because it's almost inevitable, because whatever needs to be done has to be done at least in the next 4 months, so there are possible solutions, but it's a race against time, and these will require swift action from government and business working in partnership. The next 4 months in particular are crucial in order to develop required gas infrastructure to make sure that we substitute the shortfall in supply from 2026 onwards, and it's going to take massive investment to develop, Stephen, because the new sources of gas and infrastructure, that is actually required can't just be done by industry alone. This is similar to putting network infrastructure in place, and that is not feasible for industry to single-handedly invest and develop that national scale private networks where government has actually failed. So some of the potential solutions is obviously the importation of gas from Mozambique through Matola, and the next we know that there's actually been recently announced developments in Richards Bay by Transnet, both using existing pipelines. Total Energies has actually spoken about a shovel-ready project at Matola, Mozambique, but that needs an investment decision again from government. Government, in line with existing policies, needs to probably maybe establish sufficient gas-to-power capacity through the JV with the Mozambique government and the South African government. We actually need to look at, as another option, how we already start the development of the 7 gigawatts of gas to power that needs to come online by 2020 as per the IRP. So there are various solutions, but the concern is that at least the Total Energy intervention, which is shovel ready, can only come into place by 2030. So we're going to have to say what will be quicker, because then this project of Total Energy is coming into a place by 2020 means that we sit with a 4-year gap. What do we do in that 4 years? We can't afford to lose another 70,000 jobs, like the numbers have actually been put out there. We can't afford to lose 500 billion, into the economy. We can't afford to have more than 400 SMMEs, and several hospitals and about 8,000 households and growing that will be directly impacted. At the moment, as things stand, companies are already revisiting their capex spend, and they are suspending them, and they are halting their growth plans, because they know that there is this looming gas crisis, and nothing has been put in place. The disadvantage is that we are going to be sitting at a disadvantage, in South Africa, or as South Africa, from a regional competitiveness perspective, and the biggest threats will obviously come from those African countries which have low cost natural gas supplies. So there isn't really ready actions or rather ready solutions that can actually be put in place. We're just going to have to make sure that in the next 4 months we secure something, and government makes decisions, and not the presentation of master plans, because then they present the master plan to cabinet, Stephen, then what? So we have a paper which tells us what we need to do, but that doesn't actually mean that it guarantees us the lack of supply by 2026. So the honest answer is that DMRE is not ready. They didn't see this. They saw this coming, but just like with many things, they chose to do nothing. We, for instance, knew about electricity crisis, and we didn't do anything, and now we're in this crisis situation that we actually find ourselves in.
I suppose the other question is, what happens if we do nothing? I mean, it seems almost catastrophic for this industry.
It does. It does. I mean, you already have an electricity shortage and crisis. Now, you have gas, which I think is the most sustainable and stable, source of supply. You're going to be sitting in a crisis situation as far as that is concerned. The alternatives, which is switching to fuels which are more expensive and more environmentally damaging, are really not an option, because then this has got repercussions for consumer pricing and carbon emissions. Remember, some of our companies already are sitting with very tight targets. Those that are supplying to the EU, for instance, will tell you that EU has given them very tight targets from a decarbonization perspective. They are saying the carbon content in your products is high. We need you to reduce it. One company, for instance, is saying that by 2026, they've been told that they need to reduce the carbon content in their product by 60%. And by 2030, that has to actually be zero. So switching to those fuels is actually not an option. But also, if you're going to go to expensive fuels, you're going to have to push the price to the consumer. The consumer is already very strained in this country at the moment, Stephen, and that is actually not an option. So we're sitting in a dire situation, but that is the only real and tangible solution, switching to other fuels and having our consumer pay for it, because government didn't do what they were supposed to do in time.
Busi Mavuso, thank you. CEO of Business Leadership SA, really appreciate the time. 23 after 7.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Well, confirmation overnight, really early this morning, from the presidency that government has now asked the International Court of Justice to impose more provisional measures on Israel to stop the starvation of children in Gaza. Government says at least 15 children have starved to death, literally died from starvation in Gaza, but that the real number is probably much higher and that the fighting there needs to stop. Judges have already ruled that Israel must ensure there's no genocide and take measures to protect civilians in Gaza. You can imagine, of course, how important this issue is. The situation in Gaza, it appears, seems to simply be getting worse and worse as a result of the fact that hundreds of thousands of people are living under plastic or tents in the area around Rafah in southern Gaza, simply because they've been pushed out through that area through the actions of Israel. Going to get some analysis for you on this in just a moment. As I say, a story that's been developing overnight, so many people still coming to grips with some of what's been happening there. But essentially an extension of South Africa's original request to the International Court of Justice about how to deal with this particular issue. We can speak now to Professor Mia Swart. She's a professor of international law at Wits University. Professor Swart, good morning and thank you for your time. So now our government is asking for more provisional measures to stop the starvation of children in Gaza. If we look at the facts on the ground, I imagine there's a strong case here.
Good morning, Stephen. That's right. So we see that Israel hasn't complied with the provisional measures that the court ordered in January. And we know that Ramadan is approaching, so there's a measure of urgency to this. There's a measure of urgency anyway, when it comes to genocide, but there's now a heightened urgency.
I imagine that the judges at the court will be watching this very closely, but I don't know if they've ever been put in a position like this before, having to make a decision quite so urgently with the eyes of the world upon them. And Israel, of course, will bring its own arguments here.
That is correct. And we know that Israel has only very recently responded, complied with the court's request that they report within a month. And the court might still even be, considering that response. And the court is a slow sort of animal. So I think it's extremely unlikely that we will see, additional or provisional measures or a modification of provisional measures, which is what South Africa is also asking for in the space of the next 4 days. I think this is extremely unlikely.
In the meantime, despite all sorts of pressure from around the world and many countries around the world, there's still no prospect of a ceasefire, and the negotiations between Hamas and Israel don't seem to be making any progress.
That is correct. We know that countries such as Qatar and Egypt, have been meeting in Cairo over the last days, and Israel has not even, showed up for it, which I think is very telling. My sense is that, Israel is just not going to agree to any terms at this point and, is sort of determined to go ahead with military action.
Professor Mia Swart, thanks very much indeed. Associate Professor of International Law at Wits University. And, of course, more developments on that. I understand Obed Bapela will be available to speak to you in about 10 minutes or so from now. He's the Deputy Chair of the ANC Subcommittee on International Relations, also a Deputy Minister. But we'll get the ANC's view on this in just a few moments. You're with SAFM, 27 minutes now after 7 o'clock.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. What happened with Pirates?
Well, their fans say that they are in trouble. They faced a setback, a disappointing draw against Cape Town Spurs last night in the DStv Premiership match. The scoreline 1-1 leaves Pirates fans hanging in a mix of anticipation and anxiety as they look ahead to the much-anticipated Soweto derby. Now, Pirates took the lead with Relebohile Mafokeng's early goal, but couldn't maintain their advantage as Cape Town Spurs fought back with a second-half equaliser from Gabriel Michael. This draw has sparked a wave of reaction from the Pirates camp with concerns over their readiness for the upcoming derby. Meanwhile, Sekhukhune United, they climbed up the Premiership table, securing a crucial 1-0 win against Royal AM, further intensifying the league's competition as the season progresses. Chippa United, they handed co-coaches Thabo September and Kwanela Kopo their first DStv Premiership victory, beating 10-man Richards Bay 3-0 at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium last night, while Stellenbosch FC got the better of their neighbours Cape Town City, 1-0 the scoreline. Devon Titus struck just after the half-hour mark to secure a league double over their rivals and also pushed themselves up to second place on the table. European football, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has expressed his confidence in the team, stating they finally feel they belong amongst Europe's elite. This come after City's impressive performance, securing their spot in the Champions League quarter-final with a comprehensive win over FC Copenhagen. City are joined by already qualified Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid with an aggregate score of 6-2. Here's City boss Pep Guardiola.
Well, we've pretty big scored early on, and that helped us a lot. We knew it that game. This game is jazzy. Who scored first, and we were lucky to do it early with the corner, and after with Julian. But next round. And still we are there in this competition.
Now, the Chelsea women's boss, Emma Hayes, says she backs forward Sam Kerr. The Australian football star pleaded not guilty to racially aggravated harassment of a police officer in an incident in Twickenham in January last year. Now, Kerr, born in Kolkata, India, to an English father and Indian mother, is the captain of Australia's national women's team, the Matildas, and the country's all-time leading scorer in international soccer with 69 goals from 128 games. Here's Chelsea women's boss, Emma Hayes.
I think the first thing I want to say is that, Sam has our full support. She knows that. Yes, it's a difficult time for her. Of course, I can't comment on it. You already know that. What I can say is that I know she's pleaded not guilty.
On to golf now, and the Masters champion John Rahm says the official world golf ranking is not a good system after Liv Golf withdrew its application to join. A letter from the league CEO Greg Norman told players it will not pursue its bid for world ranking points. Here's John Rahm.
I didn't think it was a good system back then, and if anything, the more time that goes on, the more it proves to be wrong. If anybody in this world, for example, doesn't think Joaco deserves to be in the top 10 or doesn't know that he's a top player in the world, I don't know what game you're watching, right? So we can tell. I think anybody who watches golf can tell who the best players in the world are. And obviously, I don't think the ranking is reflective of that right now to its entirety.
More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Lots to come. We'll find out a bit more about the Zondo Commission. We hear from Obed Bapela as well in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Stage 2 now, Stage 4 from 8 o'clock at 7:30.
A very good morning with the news headlines. Kemudupi Makhalemele. A new witness is expected to testify before the Gampepe Commission of Inquiry this morning. The commission has been instituted to look into the devastating fire that claimed the lives of 77 people in the Joburg CBD last year. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, who is also an ANC NEC member, says He will not comment on which political party the ANC may go into coalition with in the upcoming elections. And Sudan's military-led government says it'll allow some humanitarian aid to be delivered via Chad and South Sudan. Details of these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Taxi strike in Ekurhuleni is the top story this morning. Deserted taxi ranks. There are commuters there looking for taxis, but no taxis. Benoni, Boksburg, Davidton, down to Katlehong and through parts of Brakpan into Germiston and up as far as Tembisa. It looks like the whole of Ekurhuleni is on a pretty proper and serious taxi strike this morning. For relying on taxis, you need to think about alternative transport. And just looking at roads around Ekurhuleni, they are noticeably busier this morning. So extra traffic volume, very noticeable. Crash on Joburg's Mike 1 going north near Carr Street, so heavy coming through from Omonde. The M2 in from Joslo, those quite heavy as well as you line up into that mess at the Crown. The Klip River Drive option off the N12 up towards Boysons, that's heavy. There is some load shedding in that area this morning, so obviously an impact on that Klip River Drive going northbound. Vic Coppin Road's very heavy from North Riding through to Four Ways. That's a bit unusual. And a lot of pressure around Mid-Rand. That's a busy place to be. The N1 solid this morning. Brockfontein to New Road. Approaches to the highway like Olifantsfontein, Samrand are very heavy. And the alternative R101 to avoid the N1 is properly queuing as well through from Centurion in towards Olifantsfontein and Mid-Rand. Durban, the M13, a crash top of Fields Hill. That's still very slow coming through from Hillcrest. N2 North, much heavier than normal this morning, queuing before the M7 right through to Spaghetti Junction. And if you're driving into Cape Town, the N2 remains backed up with a crash at Khayelitsha. It happened a while ago. It's still there. N2 inbound by the R300. Traffic's all the way back to Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray McClarky, good morning. Asian markets, US markets, how's it looking?
Well, both markets are down across the board. Investors are still reacting to the testimony by U.S. Central Bank Chair Jerome Powell before lawmakers about the outlook for interest rates. Powell has raised the possibility of an interest rate cut from June this year. Investors are now questioning by what percentage will the first interest rate cut in many years be before the U.S. market opens later today. The U.S. futures market is down. NASDAQ, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each down 0.3%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 0.6%. China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.4%. And Japan's Nikkei is down 0.9%. And the local market, the JSE, was up 1.9% yesterday. The shares of retail and mining companies were mostly up.
And Canal Plus, they've raised their bid for multi-choice.
Yeah, French broadcaster Canal Plus is not giving up on buying MultiChoice, the owner of DSTV. Canal Plus has increased the price that it is willing to pay to buy the rest of MultiChoice shares that it does not own. Canal Plus already owns 35% of MultiChoice. It is now prepared to pay 37 billion rand to buy the rest of MultiChoice. Canal Plus increased its offer price by about 5 billion rand. The MultiChoice board is now considering the increased offer.
And then the CEO at Business Unity SA, Kaz Kovadia, he's going to retire.
Yeah, Business Unity South Africa, or BUSA, is the country's largest business organization. BUSA has announced that its CEO, Kaz Kovadia, will step down from his role in January 2025 or next year. Kovadia is set to retire. He was appointed as BUSA CEO in 2020 after serving 15 years as a managing director of the Banking Association of South Africa. At BUSA, Kovadia will be replaced by the organization's deputy CEO, Khulekani Mathe.
Ray McClarky, thank you. Ray, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day. 24 minutes now to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Unati on the line from Gqeberha. Unati, hi, good morning. You want to talk about gas power?
Morning, SG and the SFM listeners. Yes, man. I think there are quite a number of things that are happening here. One, when we are talking about the issue of gas to power, business's voice has been silent when it comes to all the advocacy that needed to be done when we were faced with issues such as the seismic surveys, all these projects that talks to exploration within the country where the environmental working groups would come and oppose and appeal against those. The business, for organized business voice, is very silent, and hence we find ourselves in such situations. Two, yes, our government is, as Usis Busi just put it out there, our government sometimes is found napping in some of these issues, and that's one of the worrying things. Whilst they are active with all the bills, the master plans, as she put it out there, like right now there's the upstream bill, of which communities need to be taken abreast to understand what does this upstream bill mean for just a normal South African. And lastly, the last part.
Nati, are you there?
Yeah. LNG.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Even the importation of LNG. One of the other things that is going to be a challenge with that, and we have seen it now with the current bunkering situation, would be: is there does SARS have a legislation or regulation with regards to that? Because that's going to be the other problem that we are going to find ourselves against with SARS in that regard. Yeah.
All right. Well, not in Quebec. Important questions, I think, on this. And in a way, business has been silent during some of these debates in the past. 22 minutes to 8.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, let's get more on the situation now with our government asking the International Court of Justice to impose more provisional measures on Israel. They say to stop the starvation of children in Gaza. As we know, the situation there is very dire. Judges have already ruled that Israel must ensure there's no genocide and take measures to protect civilians in Gaza. Obed Bepela is the Deputy Chair of the ANC Subcommittee on International Relations, also Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises and a member of the ANC's NEC. Deputy Minister, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning to you and to your listeners.
I presume as the ANC, you support government's request here. What do you think the judges at the International Court of Justice should order?
Definitely. I mean, the situation is dire, as you said. People might be dying of starvation soonest from surviving the bombs and the killings that are happening in Gaza. We saw over 30,000 people dead now. Now those who have survived have been pushed to the desert, and then the measures that the South African government is asking, we have said that this could be a genocide, and obviously that matter was not concluded by the ICJ. And then we have called for the ceasefire. It has not been done also either as a measure. And we are therefore asking for these provisional measures to be looked at, including access for humanitarian aid to go in. And it's so easy. I mean, America, UK, and then the others that are supporting Israel could really then begin to send their own soldiers and escort all these trucks and then take the necessary thing, medication, clothes, food, water, to that environment. And I don't think the Israel Defense Force will take them. These are the measures that will just throw in and then see if the judges can really begin to adopt some of them and really pressurize on the powers that be that let's save lives in that situation.
Do you worry that actually it might take a long time for the judges to make a decision, or the decision may not help very much in the end? The situation in Gaza is obviously urgent, and from what I can see, there doesn't seem to be any prospect of a ceasefire.
Well, the judges really ought to I don't think it will be difficult for them to go into the court. And it's additional provisions that we're asking to, whatever provisions that are already there. It's not much about listening to all sides. It's more about saving life now. And then the starvation that is about to hit our people. And it's just really for them to meet and say, there's this request for additional measures. And if agreed, then let's then begin to adopt them and send them to the UN Security Council so that they can then necessarily take that decision. I know that America has always been objecting, and some of the decisions from the UN Security Council could not happen, such as the ceasefire, as you have said. So disappointing. But on humanitarian and saving lives, can we just wake up to that particular issue? And all of us say we're here to save lives.
Deputy Minister, there are many different things happening at the moment, as you know, and in fact our original invitation to you yesterday was to talk about a different comment you had made. So what happened was the multi-party charter movements of parties, they said this week that they want G7 countries to send observers to watch or monitor our elections. You said we should also invite, I think you said our friends, I don't know if you're speaking as the ANC, what you meant by that. What did you mean by that comment?
Well, they are wanting certain observers to come, and that is the norm, that IEC and the multi-party organizations within it can then take decisions. But also there will be interest by other groupings. The EU has always been observing our elections, so it's not new. AU has been observing, it's not new. So I don't know who else are they looking at other than the usual suspects that have been observing our elections, including the United Nations also has been sending observers. So I do not know who they mean, but if they mean extra people who are sympathetic to the MPC itself, the multi-party charter, we know that also is allowed within what we call friends of the parties. The ANC have always had what we call friends of the parties that will come from a liberation movement in the region, some of the friends that we might then also look beyond the continent to say, you also can come and be part of the friends of the ANC. And all other parties, if they have such friends, they can also do so. So that area is not a controversial area. It has been allowed in the past. And then the IEC will then have to register those people so that they have access to the stations to a particular limitation, and that is in the law, and then I think the IEC will be able to manage it. So it's not going to be just NPC friends. We will also be inviting our own friends, as usually we do so in every elections.
Do you think you would like to see, I don't know, for example, people from ZANU-PF or people from Russia monitoring our elections?
Well, ZANU-PF is part of the former liberation movement in the region. They've invited us to their own elections recently, where Lindi Zulu led the ANC delegation, and were able to be friends of the party to observe those elections.
But is Zimbabwe really a democracy, Deputy Minister? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, Zimbabwe really a legitimate democracy? Really?
Well, look, yeah, there are regular elections in Zimbabwe. Okay, let's give them that. At least they do hold elections.
And Russia. I mean, come on. I mean, the fact that you're laughing tells me so much, I'm afraid to say. Maybe it's just me. But you and I both know that ZANU-PF does not have democratic legitimacy. I mean, they use violence, and we all know that.
But then there was less violence in these elections. I think you all got those reports. In the past, that used to be the situation. We were criticized for that. We have engaged them on the issue of not using violence in the elections. And they've heeded the call, and then this time there was no violence. And the elections went legitimately this time, save obviously for certain technicalities that they still have to really resolve within their electoral laws to firm them up using their parliamentary majority now, so that future elections are even an improved version of the outcome, free, so that people can express their will without any intimidation.
Right. Well, Deputy Minister, I'll leave it to members of the audience to explain their view. I'm sure there'll be one. I must ask you, and I realize you speak about international relations for the ANC, but you are a member of the National Executive Committee. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about the listing process, well, not yet. But there was a statement yesterday from your spokesperson, your national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu-Motsiri, about the comments made against the Electoral Commission by Umkhonto weSizwe. And I'm sure you've seen these comments. They threaten violence. They threaten violence. They threaten that nobody will be allowed to vote, for example, if MK is not allowed to be on the ballot. How do you feel about these statements by MK?
It's so worrying that people can really be issuing such statements and even recording themselves talking, so that it's not fake news. We can see They are wearing the regalia of the MK party. They are threatening and violence and to South Africans. And it is not how to participate democratically in an open system. If they want to contest, let them contest, but without threats of violence. But obviously, the Mkhonto name is in dispute because that is originally an ANC organ. That was a liberation movement organ, and we are wanting that name not to be used. They can use any other name and still contest, but they can not use this name. But obviously, it's up to the court to listen to both arguments by themselves and ourselves, claiming the name Mkhonto as belonging to the historical archives of the African National Congress, and no one can then use it. But we are not saying they cannot contest and under any name. There are so many names that they can choose, but not choose our own archive names, because they must be an independent, clearly identified, and not hide behind the colors of the African National Congress or the names of our liberation credentials.
Deputy Minister, thank you. I'm sure you and I will arm wrestle again soon. I appreciate the time. Obed Bapela is the Deputy Chair of the NC's International Relations Subcommittee, a member of the NEC, but also Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises. All right, your views then on the situation with the intervention we're making, or the request we're making of the International Court of Justice, your view on what MK has been saying. You heard what the Deputy Minister said there on behalf of the ANC, and then also your view on, I suppose, elections, democracy, Russia, Zimbabwe, whatever it is. 086 000 2032, 12 minutes to 8.
My newest obsession, the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel. That 6-cylinder engine will take you by surprise. Succumb to its powers. Experience the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel for yourself.
Third placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top two teams on the table, whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love You. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting in Mpumalanga this morning, the R36, the Leidenburg Kluther Road has been blocked by protesters. So if you're going that way, it's unlikely you'll get through. Again, a trend that we're seeing is large amounts of soil dumped onto the roadway on that section of the R36, I beg your pardon, and nothing able to get through. That big mounds of soil. So you've got trucks and vehicles all stacking up in that area. Pretoria, the nation's capital, looking fairly slow again on the N4 inbound towards the M1. Linwood Road is quite heavy this morning. There is some load shedding as you make your way slowly through Linwood towards the N1 highway. And just a busy one on Solomon Mashlanga as well through Pretoria East. A couple of stopping points there. Crashing on the N1 South near Buerta Avenue. So from the R21, that's all quite heavily backed up. Midrand, very slow this morning. The highway, the side roads, the approaches, all very busy. Crash out by Greenstone, causing delays on Modderfontein Road and Van Riebeeck Road. Over in Durban, we've been tracking some hold-ups on the M13. There's been a crashing at the top of Fields Hill. It means a delay just as you leave Hillcrest and arrive into the Kloof area. M7's very heavy. Queensborough down towards the roadworks at Bel Air again today. And Cape Town, some load shedding around the Parow, Goodwood, Plattekloof, Panorama and Elsie's River areas. So noticeable disruptions around that part of Cape Town with lights out of multiple junctions. N2 inbound still queuing passing Khayelitsha towards a crash at the R300. And the N7's worth a mention today. It's backed up along Jake Scoville Drive from the N2 highway all the way up slowly through Epping, Langa and in towards Voortrekker Road in Goodwood. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The SABC TV Licenses Winner Holiday Experience competition has finally come to an end. And we are pleased to announce that Thabo Batye is the overall winner who will be jetting off to Coachella in April with his girlfriend. I don't even know what to say. Thabo entered the Winner Holiday Experience with SABC TV Licenses competition last year when it was running between 1 September and the 15th of December. He simply paid his TV license while he was at his grandmother's house in Kimberley, and he was hoping to win a PlayStation at the time. Little did he know that he would win the grand prize to either Coachella or the Bundesliga in Germany. Thabo obviously chose Coachella. Congratulations, Thabo. You are proof that paying your TV license really is the right thing to do. SABC TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Some say, Ematot Aipeli. Others are saying, UX Ongasoveli. Black and white, tackles, gold and black in the DSTV Premiership. This is the Soweto Derby, Mzansi's biggest football jamboree. Sazoshuba, Amapaganea versus Amakosi on Saturday, 9 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Let's start with Kirk in Cape Town. Kirk, hi. You want to talk about Gaza? Go for it.
Good morning, Stephen. Yes, in all the reporting that has been going on since the ICJ case, South Africa's ICJ case, I've lost track of the hostages that are still being held in that area, the Israeli hostages. Can you just tell me, what is the situation with them being returned? Is it part of Israel's demand for then negotiations to take place or ceasefire?
Kirk, I'm no expert on it, but my understanding is that Israel has asked Hamas for a list of the hostages which are still alive. Hamas has refused to give that list until there's a ceasefire. That's my understanding. It's one of the sticking points of the negotiations at the moment. But the majority of the hostages, as far as we know, are still being held.
Yeah, and that is possibly why Israel is not attending the talks that Egypt are holding. It makes sense that they would want their citizens back. I do think that the whole Israel part of this conflict has been way out of proportion. But having your citizens held captive is certainly an issue that any country would want to have resolved. But the reaction has been over the top, in my opinion.
All right, Kirk in Cape Town, thank you. Churchill and Mtata, Israel and Russia, hi.
Hi, Stephen. Stephen, when we started on this, in fact, let me start by saying what is being done by America, Israel and their allies must be condemned in every strongest term.
Mm-hmm.
And those visuals, you can't just watch, you can't watch them. But now the question that I'm asking is, as South Africa, we went there, obviously wanted to achieve something. Israel was exposed that they don't comply. But now to pursue this further, I really don't understand, because I think we knew that they were not going to comply, especially if America is involved, because America is the biggest culprit here. Now, if I were to advise, let's rather focus on more pressing issues domestically, because there are more pressing issues in this country. As we do condemn what is happening there, but this time around, we can't push it any further. And we knew that they were not going to comply. That's my advice.
Yeah, Churchill, I don't know. I mean, I think we should be able to do things at once. You might have problems in your own home, but if your neighbour's home is on fire, I think you do want to go and help, don't you?
Yes, I know. I do understand. But at the end of the day, knowing that these orders have not been complied with.
Yeah.
This has been happening.
Sure.
They have not been complied with.
All right,
and now, especially when America is involved.
Yeah. Churchill and Mtata, thank you. Billy and Sekekune, you heard the conversation with Obed Bapela.
Yes, how are you, Stephen?
I'm well, Billy. Go for it.
We are very disappointed with the ANC of late. It has become a shadow of itself. We are asking a simple question. Is the ZANU-PF a democratic government? It's just laughing. It is not.
Yeah.
It is not.
Yeah.
And it takes this thing so easy. As if now, the problem, they go as far as the hate to fight for Palestinians. They cannot fight for Zimbabweans here. They cannot fight for us here. We don't know what organization it is. Where does it derive its mandate of operation?
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shamble, really. We are so embarrassed by what they are doing.
All right.
We are about to disown them very soon. Thank you very much.
All right, no, Billy and Sekekune. I mean, look, I was surprised by that response, which is why I commented on it at the time and gave him a chance to respond to my comment. But yeah, I mean, that I can't be responsible for what he says. That's what he said. Dumasani in Durban. Dumasani, you've been on hold forever, my friend. Good morning. Taxis and bullying. Go for it.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well.
Good, sir. Yesterday, I gave 2 of my neighbors a lift. Now, I stay in South Coast.
Yeah.
In a little town called Scottsboro.
Yeah.
So I drive to work every morning where I work in Durban.
Yeah.
And I gave 2 of my neighbors a lift.
In a normal car?
In my car.
Yeah.
In my own personal car.
Yeah.
And then I was stopped by these taxi, owners or drivers, whoever they were.
Mm.
And then I was made to pay 1,500 for each passenger who I gave a lift.
What?
Exactly.
Did they have guns, Dumasani?
No, they didn't.
But that's, I mean, it's so scary.
But I could see they had guns with them.
Sure.
So luckily it's the beginning of the month. We do have extra cash in our pocket, so I had to pay it. So they actually followed me to a garage, to a Shell Ultra City at Mukababa. So I withdrew the money and I gave them.
Sheesh, Dumasani. And the police, I mean, do you have any hope that they'll do anything for you?
I didn't report it because I know there is nothing which is going to happen.
4.5, eh? Sure.
And the second issue, which is very sensitive to me and is very close to my heart, also in the same town where I'm staying in, I'm based in a place called Amahlongwa, which is run by Umtoni municipality. We haven't had electricity since January this year.
Sure.
We haven't had water since January this year. And if you call a tanker to come and fill your tanks at home, it's going to cost you 2,500 rand.
Sure, Dumasani.
And our transformer blew up through natural causes. In fact, it was struck by lightning. And then our councillor and our so-called prominent community members, they formed a little committee, and each household had to pay 1,000 rand for the transformer.
Sure.
For the new transformer. And we were told it was a request by ESCOM.
Yeah.
That must pay 1,000 rand.
Sure. Dumasani, in a way, I think your stories have told us how tough life is in South Africa. You've got violence on the one side. No one does anything. You don't even go to the police because, the police are not going to do anything for you when the taxis behave like that. You've got no water. You've got no electricity. Dumasani, I think in a way your experiences, it just explains kind of where we are. I'm really sorry to hear you going through that. I hope, pray sometimes, or I hope for better days. I'm not a religious person, but I hope for better days. And just, it just shows you how tough it is. We were talking about taxis yesterday and how it is around the country they're able to get away with it. Some of them defend it on the radio. It's amazing. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thanks, Stephen. The top stories this hour. A new witness to testify at the Usindiso building fire inquiry And the Steve Biko Hospital suspends 5 nurses. A very good morning to you. A new witness is expected to testify before the Khampepe Commission of Inquiry this morning. The commission has been instituted to look into the devastating fire that claimed the lives of 77 people in the Joburg CBD last year. The government-owned Usindiso building is believed to have been hijacked, and these individuals were said to have been collecting rent money. Horisanis Tole has more.
The commission has since said that the building was not designed to house people. Several witnesses have since testified at the commission, including those who were residing at the building, as well as officials from the city of Johannesburg and Joburg Water. Meanwhile, self-confessed arsonist Thembiso Lawrence Mdlalose is in the dock for his alleged involvement in setting the building on fire.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, who is also an NEC member, says he will not comment on which political party the ANC may go into coalition with in the upcoming elections. He made the comments during a sit-down interview with SABC News. Godongwana says the ANC will go into the upcoming elections with the intention of winning an outright majority.
That's career limiting. Mbalula will fire me if I answer that question, because Mbalula's view and the ANC is that we should not be discussing that. We should be discussing the fact that we are going to have an overwhelming majority in the elections on the 29th of May. But I've outlined to you for municipalities or provinces, if those things can happen, what kind of criteria from where I sit we would like.
The Gauteng Health Department says 5 nurses from the Steve Biko Academic Hospital in Pretoria have been placed on precautionary suspension following allegations of gross negligence. This after a video emerged last month of a 28-year-old male left unattended at the hospital's emergency unit. The man has since died. Here's the department spokesperson, Modalatale Mudiba.
The employees have since been suspended to allow for further investigation into the incident. The facility management continues to engage the affected family to enable redress processes to unfold. Counseling services have also been offered to the family.
The Ministry of Finance in the Northwest, Motlalipula Khosho, is set to deliver the provincial annual budget at the provincial legislature in Mahikeng. This last provincial budget presentation is expected to provide an update on what the 6th administration has done in terms of job creation and stabilizing financial administration in the province. Tulufelo Mohami reports.
Khosho says she believes a lot has been achieved by the 6th administration, and the incoming administration will work on the solid foundation already laid for them. Khosho adds that the budget is expected to state measures put in place by government to protect the social sector, job creation initiatives, performance by provincial economies, and key economic drivers. Solfelo Mohami, SABC News, Mahikeng.
And Sudan's military-led government says it will allow some humanitarian aid to be delivered via Chad and South Sudan. It has banned deliveries via Chad after accusing the UAE of using aid convoys to supply weapons to the military group, the Rapid Support Forces. The UAE has denied doing so. The UN humanitarian coordinator in Sudan says the move was a welcome step and would help reach people in dire need of life-saving assistance. More than 10 months of conflict between rival military forces has left thousands dead and about 8 million displaced. The top story at 8 o'clock, a new witness is expected to testify before the Khampepe Commission of Inquiry this morning, looking into the devastating fire that claimed the lives of 77 people in the Joburg CBD last year. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Soccer. Itumeleng Kune's return is seen as a boost for Kaizer Chiefs ahead of the derby. And in tennis, Rafa Nadal pulls out from the Indian Wells tournament, citing a lack of readiness. We'll bring you the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays busy on the M1 between Pretoria and Joburg this morning. An earlier crash at Boerta Avenue, slowing traffic arriving from the R21 highway exit. And then it gets really heavy, as it has been for a good couple of hours now, between Brockfontein and the New Road exit. The exits out of Midrand towards the highway, noticeably Olifantsfontein and New Road stay busy as well. A crash at Greenstone Mall, so Modderfontein Road and Van Riebeeck Road options are under pressure this morning. Durban side, the M7 stays jammed from Queensborough down towards Bel Air and Wakesley. A little bit of traffic still slow coming into Kloof after an earlier crash at the top of Fields Hill. That's the M13 as you arrive in from the Hillcrest side. Cape Town, the collision on the N2 inbound at the R300. That scene has been clear. That traffic is starting to flow again, although there is a little bit of a backlog around the N2 Spine Road on your way to Cape Town. And just busy generally around Goodwood and Parow, Plattercliff, Panorama, Elsie's River as load shedding wraps up. Load shedding now moving into Tableview, Burtersack and Montague Gardens. So expect some delays, particularly around the Bosman's Dam Road, Edgemere Drive N7 confluence. That's all going to stay busy for a bit longer. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 8, good morning with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, you've heard the conversations. You heard Deputy Minister Obed Bapela on issues around our elections, the situation in Gaza, the situation regarding MK's comments as well. Strong condemnation from the sort of warlike tone, the warlike comment, well, the comments really, I suppose, threatening violence that came from MK earlier this week. The ANC condemning them. The Electoral Commission, I think, having a press conference today. I'm sure that issue will come up there. Other issues as well this morning, talking about taxis. You heard Dumasani's call, and just heartbreaking in a way, and he's sort of given up on the police, I think, and frankly I can't blame him. I mean, do you? What do the police do? They seem to do really nothing in situations like this. And around the country we hear about taxi drivers just having these roadblocks, doing what they want. It really is incredible that they get away with it. And you sort of wonder who, really is the sort of law and order in this country. Or taxi drivers, it seems, sometimes. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. Take your stories about that as well on 086 000 2032. We'll focus on education again, the issue around English and language coming up in education. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the water hyacinth, and then if you go to a restaurant or a tavern and you hear music, do you know that institution is supposed to pay to use the music? There's a big dispute between restaurants and the people who are supposed to manage the payment. Someone's gone to a police station to lay a criminal charge. Quite a strange story. We'll bring that to you after 8:30. It's 9 after 8. Good morning.
Two champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift-A-Day Walker.
Walker takes the tap.
Against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka.
Who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a two-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Attention filmmakers, are you ready? It's time to showcase the vibrant tapestry of KZN's cultural heritage at the Simon Mabuna Sabela KZN Film and Television Awards, South Africa's ultimate celebration of cinematic excellence. In partnership with the SABC and KZN EDTEA, we champion innovation, paving the way for the future of cinema. This year we go beyond imagination. Cut, edit your 1-minute submissions, because call for entries is now open until the 28th of March 2024. For more information, visit www.kznfilm.co.za or follow us on our social platforms. Join the conversation using hashtag SSA24. KZN Film, our kingdom is your stage.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
10 after 8. Well, there's been a really interesting report based on the answers that matric learners gave in their exams last year. It's not so much looking at the marks they got. It's looking at how they used language. And of course, the majority of them are in English. And some of the issues, it seems, are around paragraph writing and then other questions around a lack of culture of reading. We've spoken before about how difficult it is to get young people to read. And even in my case, I have a 14-year-old boy who read all the time, gets a cell phone, stops reading. How do you then get children to read, even against the sort of massive entertainment value that a cell phone can give you? But there's also issues around, and some of the responses talk about what are called linguistic barriers. And this means that some people are just not able to answer the questions properly, and you see it in certain subjects. Professor Mary Metcalf is a professor of practice at the University of Johannesburg and education expert. Professor Metcalf, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Stephen.
It seems there's quite a lot this report tells us. I mean, it seems to tell us that there are issues about the use of language among our children at school.
I think it's a very important report, and I don't often do this, but I'm going to acknowledge the journalist who did the work, because it really is a significant contribution. What he did is he looked at the reports from examiners on the performance of learners in the NSC. So after all of the interest in the National Senior Certificate results have died down, the system likes to look at what went wrong in detail across subjects. And he's read those reports across the subjects at the NSC level. And what he's found is that there are real problems with the use of English. Of course, firstly, with people for whom English is a second language, but he also has some criticisms for people who are writing first language. And what's clear is that that bulk of learners who perform poorly, some of whom pass at a low level and many of whom fail, are struggling with the language of the questions, the language of the concepts, the language in which they're trying to express themselves. And I think that this is something that the system has to look at very deeply.
Is it all about language policy? Is that really the issue? And the fact that we use English, and often learners, I think, transfer from their mother tongue to English kind of halfway through primary school?
You know, the thing that I really find interesting and would love to have more debate on is what our language policy and the language legislation allows is for parents to choose in which language the school will promote as the first language and when it will be introduced and when it will be phased out. The whole system operates, as you've suggested, that the majority of our learners transition from a first language to an additional language in grade 4, when the majority are not ready for that. That is educationally a challenge. But the law allows for school governing bodies to say, we're going to continue with teaching our children in the medium of isiZulu or Swati or whatever it may be. Now, if that is going to happen, which I believe it should, we need to be able to communicate to families, to schools, to communities that learning in English and learning English are not the same thing. Many people assume that they've just got to get their children to learn English because it tends to be the language of commerce and industry and access. But we need to extend the length of time in which children are learning in their first language until they are really confident, firstly, in reading in their first language. Secondly, they have some sense of oral fluency. They have some vocabulary in the language into which they transition. Now, that is a school level decision, but it needs to be supported, and it's a bit of a risk, and it's quite hard, I think, because we need the publishing industry to start preparing learning material in African languages that if a school makes that choice, they'll be able to get the textbooks, they'll be able to get the learning materials. And of course that's a risk when I say risk, because supply-demand economies of scale.
Sure.
Or we just have to absolutely invest more. Well, not all, and we have to invest more in providing reading material. You I know, have been preaching about the importance of libraries. Our quintile 1 schools, the poorest schools, only 47% of those schools have access to anything like a library. We've got to get more reading material. Sorry, Stephen, I'm going on.
No. There's an interesting quote in the report, and it comes from Professor Vumalan Budele, who's from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And he says this, and I'm quoting from the report, he says, English was a barrier for some learners only because we choose to insist on relegating it to the position of second and third language. And then he says, India has 700 languages, but English is a compulsory language. Children who complete their schooling there are well positioned to join a university anywhere in the world. And I'm saying this because someone is going to phone in and say, what we should do is just make it compulsory to learn in English from grade 1. Now, there must be arguments against that, but someone will make that point.
You know, Stephen, I always find this... to make this argument doesn't require sophisticated educational research. It requires common sense. So let me be a bit arrogant on that. If you put me in a grade 1 class and asked me to start learning to read in German, and I don't have any German, I don't understand the vocabulary in German. I don't use the sentence structure. You can only learn to read, which is reading is the process of extracting meaning from symbols. You can only extract that meaning if you have a sense of vocabulary and you have a sense of the meaning. So you must learn to read in the language with which you are familiar. Now, I've been to schools. I remember going to school near in the West Rand, where it was an English medium school that was now accepting learners into grade 1 who were not fluent in English. This was several years ago. What they did made sense to me. They scrapped the curriculum to a large extent. They spent 6 months getting oral fluency in English before they started trying to teach reading. They got these young children to be able to to be able to talk, to listen to stories in English. You cannot teach reading unless you first establish the fluency. So, if we changed the curriculum and said the first year is establishing oral fluency in the language in which children are then going to be taught concepts like maths. Obviously, you can introduce that a bit earlier if you do bilingual, multilingual approaches. But you can't learn to read until you've done that. But there will be pushback. You'll get another call about why do we have English dominance? How do we get parity of esteem? Yeah.
Professor Mary Metcalf, thank you. Professor of Practice at the University of Johannesburg and education expert. So many issues in all of this. Well, listening to this is Elijah Mhlanga, spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. Elijah, good morning. Language policy in a country like ours is incredibly difficult and it's incredibly important. Does the department think there might be scope for some change? Do you think we need change?
Good morning, Stephen. Absolutely. In fact, we are doing a lot to bring that change that you're talking about in terms of the language matter, which has been a central discussion over the years, especially in the sector. But now we've got to a point where we are moving full steam in terms of implementing the mother tongue-based bilingual education.
So what would that mean? Learners will be able to learn in their mother tongue for much longer? When you say bilingual, would that mean that they would study maths in their mother tongue or maths in English, or would they have an option? Would it depend where they are?
Yes, mother tongue is the focus, but at the same time, English would be taught as a subject. So that's what we mean. In fact, if you look at our reading literacy strategy, which we had put together, it was talking about mother tongue education in the system, which is culturally relevant. But in in there was a missing cog, which was the mother tongue, which should be implemented for all learners in the system going across the grades. And the experiment which was done in the Eastern Cape has helped us a lot. That's why even during the international language celebrations, we were there to go forward with the implementation, because we realized that there are benefits from if we taught in mother tongue, and the concepts that learners are exposed to in the classroom are better explained in the mother tongue. So you're correct. It should be for much longer than what we have now in the system, where there's a switch when learners go up in the primary school level.
It will be expensive to do. I'm not saying that is a reason not to do it. I'm saying that means it might take some time for you to do. And obviously, children are halfway through a system now. You don't really want to change the system when you're halfway through it.
Well, we have made a lot of changes in the system while the system was in motion, and education systems work like that. You don't stop and make the change, but you change as the vehicle is in motion. So you make gradual changes in phases, but the important thing is that we've already started doing the work. We have a specific team in the department who are making sure on a day-to-day basis that we cover all those areas that will be success factors in terms of us implementing this in full. So it will happen in the future. We'll start it now. We'll make those gradual changes that just like we've done with other things. Expense, yes, it will be budgeted for into the future, because we recognize through all research that mother tongue-based bilingual education is the way to go.
You're also at the issue running the school governing body elections. You're obviously encouraging everybody to be a part of that, and there's a lot of evidence that shows you how an active governing body makes a big difference to a school.
That's absolutely correct. The research that we've read does show that there's always a 20% higher performance in schools where school governing bodies are fully functional. And one of the functions of the school governing bodies, once they're in place, is to decide on the language policy of a school, among other things. So it's very important that they participate in the elections and make sure that they put people who know what their responsibilities are in terms of the law. So we urge all our parents and those that are involved in the school communities to play their part to make sure that the elections take place, particularly in the first opportunity, because we don't have much time in this month. The first term ends on the 20th of March. Even though the Gazette says elections will go on until the 31st of March, we don't have all that time as gazetted. So it's important that we get our schools to finalize their plans and actually go on to host the elections.
Is it difficult to encourage people? Do you find in some schools people just aren't interested?
Absolutely. Our monitoring does indicate that we're still struggling. Even yesterday, I saw in some schools where the meeting was arranged for 4 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, it was only when it was starting. Even the numbers there were low. So you can see that people's personal circumstances also impact on the attendance to meetings. But it's important that the school and the current body decide on a time that is suitable for everyone, so that we're able to get the right numbers, so we can have maximum participation in the elections. Otherwise, it will be a small number of people who will decide for the majority what is going to happen in the school.
Elijah Mhlanga, thank you. Spokesperson in the Department of Basic Education. Well, calls on this coming through on 086 000 2082 and 2032. Listen to me this morning. Tanda Sizwe on the line from Mthatha. Hi, good morning.
Yes, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it. Education.
Yes, I'm going for education. As I see for this matter on the table at this point in time, it will be a disaster for our children.
What will be a disaster?
Changing the education system into another tongue system, of which the vocabulary and the material stuff for the children to study, it will be their mother tongue language. It will be a disaster. They won't be able to connect with the universe as well as the medium of instruction that is English.
Right. So you're saying that they shouldn't be learning in mother tongue?
They shouldn't be learning, but they can learn some certain languages in the mother tongue with their own textbook for their mother tongue. Some other things, they don't need to be changed, because now we're going to be lost. The children will be stuck in the future.
All right, Tanda Sizwe, thank you. I wasn't expecting that view on this. Zoe in King Williamstown at Konke. Hi.
Yes, good morning, Stephen. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Go for it.
Hey, I don't know, Steve. I want to make a contribution. I don't know where to start because I'm not a teacher. I never was a teacher.
Yeah.
But my experience for me, or my understanding is, mother tongue instruction, the importance of mother tongue instruction can never be overemphasized.
Yeah.
But now, what level should we start now with a new language? I don't know. For example, I was young when I grew up in the Eastern Cape. We were taught 3 languages, but at first we started with our own language, East Xhosa. I don't know what level, I can't lie to you. Maybe standard 1. I passed my standard 5 in 1979. Maybe up to standard, maybe it was up to standard 2.
Yeah.
No, maybe standard 1 where we started English. Because we were taught broom, which is now a broom, and then Afrikaans BFM. What are you doing? What do you? Fears the floor. What are you doing? I'm sleeping in the floor.
Yeah.
As a result, after that education, Stephen, I am proficient in all the 3 languages. That is what I'm encouraging even now. Even I'm shocked that even Afrikaans is not done. By we did that in standard 5. Jou pabon, vach, ek sal jou kry. Van jou sal net 'n bloedkol bly hier op my kamer hier. Hier jou gebeit en fight. Oh, that kind of thing. Oh, the Java dudes. Yeah, we became proficient. My suspicion is that we did not learn from the apartheid government. We ought to have sat down. We ought to have sat down and look at what was not good and what was good in that system of education. Because language, that is how you access knowledge, and true language. You see? I've got a passion for that now. The mistake was done. They told me, even, for example, Afrikaans was dead.
Yeah.
It was the language of the oppressor, which is nonsense. Because the language is innocent. You see?
Yeah,
so
right.
I don't know, man. I wish I had more time so that I don't become emotional. I thresh this out.
No, Zoe, look, Bonga, because, I mean, there's so much to it, isn't there? I mean, language policy and language discussions go in so many different directions. And everyone has a view because we all speak different languages. And it's sort of the point, in a way. All right, there's a lot more to talk about this. In fact, I was sort of looking at him do and stuns, and I'm sure one of them's about to put on our mediated conversation WhatsApp group that we need to do another one on languages, 28 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Already there's a bit of anticipation about this derby.
Woohoo, yes, and Kaizer Chiefs' longest-serving player, Itumeleng Khune, is back. Now, the Chiefs team, they've been in the spotlight, especially now for the high-stakes Soweto derby against Orlando Pirates. Following a challenging season, the Amakosi secured a crucial win against Golden Arrows, ending a streak of winless games and igniting hope just in time for one of the most anticipated clashes in South African soccer. The return of veteran goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune from suspension, adding to the club's morale. But it's goalkeeper Bruce Bavuma's remarkable performance with 7 clean sheets in recent matches that's been a key factor in stabilizing the team. Now, yesterday we saw the postponement of the highly anticipated DStv clash between TS Galaxy and Mamelodi Sundowns after TS Galaxy team bus was involved in an accident, and this now has put more pressure on Masandawana. Galaxy's bus collided with a private car en route to Mbombela for the league match that was supposed to have been played. Now, no one was injured on the Galaxy bus, but the driver of the VW Polo passed away at the scene. The Rockets requested the postponement, citing the fact that players were traumatized by the accident, and which the PSL has since complied. Meanwhile, the postponement of that match is tantamount to a full-blown balloon being burst in the build-up of the match, since that there's been that heated conversations or arguments between coaches Siad Dramovic and Mokoena. So hopefully this match will get on. The date has yet to be confirmed. Moving to soccer news elsewhere, Sam Kerr, the Australian football star, pleaded not guilty to racially aggravated harassment of a police officer in an incident that took place in Twickenham in January last year. Kerr, born in Kolkata, India, to an English father and Indian mother, is the captain of Australia's national women's team. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese added his thoughts on the saga, saying that Sam Kerr was delightful and did Australia proud as flag bearer for the country at the coronation of England's King Charles III last May.
That matter is, of course, a legal matter. I don't comment on legal matters before Australian courts, let alone other ones. I will say this about my contact with Sam Kerr, who was our flag bearer at the coronation. I think my contact with her was exemplary. She did Australia proud at that time, and I think that my contact with her has been nothing but delightful.
And finally, tennis. Rafa Nadal has withdrawn from the prestigious Indian Wells, citing he's not prepared to compete at his peak level. We'll keep an eye on those developing stories here on SFM with more sport around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Restaurants and music, that's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
A very good morning with the news headlines. The situation is tense in Durban Deep in Roodepoort, west of Joburg. Residents have taken to the streets to protest against illegal mining in the area. A new witness is expected to testify before the Khampepe Commission of Inquiry looking into the devastating fire that claimed the lives of 77 people in the Joburg CBD last year. And Nikki Haley, the last Republican candidate running against former U.S. President Donald Trump for her party's nomination, has officially dropped out of the race. Details of these and other stories, 9 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's a heads up. If you're going to or from OR Tambo International Airport in Joburg using the R24, you might want to think about a reroute, perhaps the N12 R21 option via Jet Park and Boxford. There's been a really big crash Joburg bound, just at Edenvale. Traffic's parking all the way back to Barbara. I think all lanes are currently closed there, so very heavy leaving the airport on your way to Joburg. But there's a major impact on the way out to the airport with a queue that extends from the N12 sort of split onto the R24 out towards that scene at Edenvale. And if it's pretty time critical getting through Galooly, just head down the N12, off ramp at Boxburg, straight up the R21, straight into the airport. A little bit further to travel, but no major obstructions, no delays on that route. Old Joburg Road staying heavy through Centurion, coming off the N1 highway, down through Samran Bridge towards Olifantsfontein. The N1 fairly busy still, but it is starting to ease, but you're still going to sit for a bit between Brockfontein and the New Road exit. Durban side, the M7's been another busy one this morning for motorists going to the Bluff. It's still backing up from around about the N2 highway through to Bel Air Road Junction, then Bel Air as you go up through Chief Abalutuli Hospital into the roadworks, all very slow. Cape Town this morning, the N1's under some pressure from Plattercliff Hill right through to the CBD. Behind that, Marine Drive is worse than it normally is. Backlogging from Lagoon Beach territory right through to that traffic on the M1. And the N7, we've been tracking delays there. That's still busy. Epping through to Voortrekker Road in the Goodwood area. And if you're leaving Kales River, the Van Riebeek Road option up towards the R300. That's still quite busy. The other side of that is some delays on Strand Road moving through the Stickland area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
My newest obsession, the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel. That six-cylinder engine will take you by surprise. Succumb to its powers. Experience the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel for yourself.
The Eagles understand how crucial maximum points are as they rapidly want to climb up the ladder of the Premier League.
Jordan whips in once more. Richards at the back post! Carissa Richards has broken the deadlock at Selhurst Park!
But the Hatters know that they need something magical to escape from danger.
Forward run from Chong, deflection, Obene's header, and the Hatters lead. What a noise from the away end, the Kop end is stuck.
Experience the Premier League encounter between Crystal Palace FC and Luton Town FC on Saturday 9 March at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. Time for your mediated conversation this morning. The South African Music Performance Rights Association, SAMPRO, says it's now laid criminal charges at a police station against a group of companies that own restaurants because it believes these outlets are not paying them to play music. as you may know, whenever we play music on SFM, we have to pay royalties on that music, which means the people who created the music, the artists, are paid for their work. This is often called needle time. And the money is usually collected by collecting agencies. Sampro is one of those agencies. But restaurant groups also say it can depend on how they play their music. For example, if you play your music from a streaming service like Spotify is already paying those artists for their music. Should those musicians be paid twice? Might be one of the questions that is coming up here. So then what is going on? Is one party right and one party wrong, or is it a bit more complicated than that? First this morning, the CEO of the Restaurant Association of South Africa, Wendy Elberts. Then the CEO of the South African Music Performance Rights Association, Fanani Lashiba. And then we'll hear from an entertainment lawyer, Nick Muzikis. We start then with Wendy Elberts from the Restaurant Association. Wendy, good morning, and thanks for your time. Do you believe or accept that you do have a duty or an obligation to pay artists for using their recorded music at a restaurant?
So, Stephen, the Copyright Act was obviously set down in 2007, and I do believe that there's an amendment that's going to be made to the bill. What that amendment is, I don't really know, but what I can tell you from our restaurant base, it is not necessarily about the royalties that are needed to be paid back to the performers. I think it is the cost to have these licenses. I think that there's a lot of controversial conversation that goes on about the distribution of different types of commercial avenues where music is played through different channels, where we pay subscriptions to those, and we obviously have music licenses in restaurants and entertainment licenses. There's also a load of these licenses that need to be paid in restaurants that make it unaffordable. The tariff costs on these are already put on a blanket approach and does not really take into account the business model that the restaurants need to pay. It makes it unaffordable. And sometimes we need to switch the music off completely for those establishments to stay open, as opposed to getting to a negotiation with the licensed organizations to get to a medium which is affordable for the restaurants to be able to participate in. So there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen, a lot of challenging parts to this conversation that need to be cleared up. This topic is really very controversial at the moment. They made a massive statement. It's gone viral. They're obviously getting the attention and the traction that they need to, but it doesn't solve the situation that we as a restaurant industry have been faced over the last 15 years. And I think these are discussions that we really need to have and to unpack as to why restaurants feel that the blanket tariff or the fee that's currently being charged, how it is based and what is acceptable, and then also proof of the distribution of the fees back to the artists. And the manner in which this is going about at the moment is causing a lot of friction between the musicians and hospitality. You know, we house a lot of these musicians in our restaurants, and that is their bread and butter for them to perform in our spaces. So we're now blended in this very controversial space in a legal component that is really obviously making a lot of noise, the challenges that come from that, and then obviously we need to now hear what SAMRO and SAMRO have to say on the matter as we unpack this conversation.
Okay. Firstly, how are restaurants playing this music? Are they using CDs? Are they using a streaming service like Spotify? And the reason I ask this is this might be legally important later. So I would presume in this day and age, a restaurant is probably using a streaming service.
Most of our restaurants use streaming services. Believe it or not, some of our restaurants are still using CDs. Some of them play music on a USB port. Some of them are using DMX. Some of them are using other commercial downloads. Some of them are using iTunes. So there's a lot of different components that our restaurants are used. But there isn't any measurement or tool within our restaurants that actually measures what music has been played and how many times a song has been played, or how many people have listened to that song. So it's all based on chair numbers. So we can have a restaurant that could have 1,000 chairs and one seat could be filled, and we're still paying the same tariff as somebody who might have 20,000 people pushing through that chair over a season.
And how much is the tariff? When you pay a license, you talked about a license earlier, is that the license you would pay to the collecting agency, the SAMRO or the SAMPRO? Correct,
and that's based on number of chairs per area, per quota. So it varies from place to place. It would be difficult to quote in excess. But if you look at the amount of money that they're claiming back from the establishments, we're talking a lot of millions of rands that they are asking for in return for music that has been played in the group of establishments. And I think all we're trying to understand is, you know, how is that measured and allocated back to to the artist.
Okay, I'm going to get to that in a moment. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the scale. Does it cost 500 Rand a year, or does it cost 10,000 Rand a year, or does it cost 1 million Rand a year?
In some establishments, anything from 20,000 and around there upwards.
20,000 Rand a year?
Correct, even more on some establishments.
Okay. At the moment, are some restaurants paying and are some not paying, or are none of them paying?
Look, I think first of all we have a good relationship with SAMPRA, and we certainly have been trying to put out good content for the restaurants to understand the differences between the different licenses. So one, there's a SAMRA and a SAMPRA, both organisations with similar names. The confusion is who do they belong to? Do they have to belong to one or the other or both? SAMRA obviously protects the music rights. That is the collection of license fees from establishments to pay the music users for the composers, authors or publishers, etc. Then obviously we have SAMPRA, which is the big controversial issue here, because that is a collection of fees that's supposed to be distributed for the performers and the artists. So that is where the singers collect their royalties from. And then there's a third organisation as well, which is much smaller in the scale, which is called Capasso, which is a mechanical rights, which is really the collection of rights for composing that particular music. And then in and amongst that, there are entertainment licenses. And then obviously they pay their DMX or they pay their third-party commercial subscribers, which makes it very complicated for restaurants who don't always understand the parameters of what their legal rights are to pay for which subscriptions and which licenses and whether it is legal or not. And I think this is where we're at. So it's not necessarily that restaurants are not paying, they just don't know who to belong to. And then I think it's also the management of the relationship. So before a restaurant may have heard of SAMRA or SAMPRA, they get threatened with legal action. So what we do find is that there's a very aggressive legal approach, and has always been a legal approach to this extent, always in the history of the relationships that we've had. And I think one of the big issues where a negative part of our relationship came from was through lockdown. Our restaurants were largely closed for a number of years, as you know, limited trading. We acted and operated as bottle stores, as takeaways, as roadhouse, etc. And yet our restaurants still had to make application to apply for a type of discount or rebate. And many of those restaurants felt that it wasn't fair to still have been charged those enormous amounts of money. So there is this very cheeky relationship that is currently happening between the parties of all the partners in this performance and music space, where the restaurants are expected to pay these licenses.
Wendy Elberts, thank you. CEO of the Restaurant Association of South Africa, 18 minutes to 9. You've heard the view from her on this issue. Let's hear now from Fanani Leshiba, the CEO of the South African Music Rights Performance Rights Association, SAMPRA. Fanani, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
You've heard Wendy Elberts there suggesting that you take quite an aggressive approach. What do you want these restaurant groups to do?
Okay, before I talk about, I respond to Wendy's accusation that we take a very aggressive approach. I need to address the issue of public performance. What is meant by public performance? Because the statement has been made that somebody could be streaming music, or they could be using a memory stick or CD or whatever. It does not matter. Public performance is about using music to add value to your business. Where that music came from, it's neither here nor there. Back in the days of physical, you will find that every cassette, every LP, every CD would have a wording to the effect that unauthorized public performance is prohibited. So what was meant by that is that when you bought that CD, you bought it for personal enjoyment. When you stream music, you are doing it for personal enjoyment. The moment you use that music to create an ambience in your restaurant, and which means you are adding value to your own business, you need to pay the owners of those.
Sure, I'm not arguing with you on that, Fanani, and we are going to be limited for time. What do you want these restaurant groups to do?
So let me deal with the issue of the aggression that Wendy has spoken about. We, in our press statement, we made it very clear that we had been negotiating with Life and Brand Portfolio since 2019. And we reached a point where Life and Brand Portfolio was not disputing the fact that they needed to pay us. They just did not want to pay. So what are we expected to do when somebody says, I know the laws, what the law says. I know the law says that I need to pay, and I am using a product, but I'm not going to pay you. There is absolutely nothing else you can do other than taking legal action against such a group.
How much money do you believe that a restaurant, let's say a restaurant that has 100 chairs, how much would that restaurant have to pay during the course of a year, roughly? Would that be about 20,000 rand?
Now, usually you find that it's about 3,000 rand for the whole year.
2,000 rand?
Yeah, 2,000 to 3,000 rand for the whole year, because it depends on the seating arrangement. As you are saying, 100 chairs, the one with 100 chairs is not going to pay the same amount of money with the one with 1,000 chairs.
Okay, if a restaurant has literally one person that comes through the year because it's a bad year, or a restaurant has 100 people, literally every hour of the day, why should that restaurant pay the same amount? On the one level, it's making virtually no money. On the other level, other example, it's making a huge amount of money. Why should it have to pay the same amount?
And Wendy knows very well that during the COVID year, we gave huge discounts to restaurants because one restaurant, they suffered because of the lockdown. We are always open to people, and Wendy knows this very well because she and I have been talking for over 5 years. She knows that when they come to us and show us their financials and say, we didn't make as much money as we would have wanted, please give us discounts. We do that. I cannot speak on behalf of other CMOs. I can only speak out on behalf of SAMPRA. We have given those discounts. So we are not unreasonable. Where people come to us and say, I didn't make money, we give those discounts because our principle is that we cannot kill the goose that lays the golden egg. We depend on these restaurants, and we cannot afford to strangle them by turning a deaf ear to their plight.
Can you prove that a restaurant is playing music? How would you prove that? I mean, at the radio station, we can give you a recording. By law, we have to keep recordings for a certain amount of time. You don't, no restaurant has that obligation. How would you prove that a restaurant's been playing music?
We have licensing inspectors that visit different establishments. They don't go there, buy food, and listen. And they even take recordings to prove that this particular restaurant is playing music. And they're not going to go there only once. You'll find that they've gone to the same restaurant about 10 times. And we know that they are playing music. And we use Shazam technology that tells us that the music that is being used in that particular restaurant belongs to SAMPRA. And the reason why I'm saying it belongs to us is because we own 100% of all commercial music that is performed in South Africa, whether local or international.
Okay. You say these companies have broken the law. Okay, fine. But now you've gone to a police station. I'm trying to understand what you expect the police officer to do. Isn't this something that should be sorted out by the civil courts? Is a police officer going to go and arrest someone for playing music? I'm afraid, Fanani, you might well have a strong legal case, but I can't see that happening.
Yeah, well, you could do both. You could lay criminal charges like we did, or you can go the civil lawsuit approach. But the reason why we have done this is because we were ignored by Life and Brand portfolio, and we spoke to our legal advisors, and they said you can lay criminal charges against these guys because they have never disputed that they are using your music. They're saying, we are using your music, but we're not going to pay you. So that is a criminal act on its own.
Okay. You say you send inspectors. Where do you send your inspectors to? Do you just go to Sandton on a Friday night? Do you go to taverns in Umlazi as well? I'm absolutely certain taverns are playing music. I hear them. Surely you would need to inspect those too.
Yes, we also send these inspectors to taverns, and we have been in negotiations. I think we only started last year with the Liquor Association to find a way of getting taverns and shebins to also comply. Because you do have some taverns and nightclubs and all that are complying. It's just that the numbers are not as big as we would want them to be. And as I said, we spoke to Life and Brand from 2019. That shows how patient we had been with them until we reached a point where we said, let's do this. And fortunately, the campaign that we embarked on and the criminal charges that we laid against Life and Brand portfolio have produced desired results, because I had a meeting with the CEO of Life and Brand portfolio yesterday, Trevor Wilhelm, and we have agreed that the Life and Brand portfolio restaurants are going to be licensed as soon as possible, and we will withdraw those criminal charges against them.
Okay. So you will lodge criminal charges against taverns if they don't pay?
Yes. If they don't pay, we will do exactly the same thing. But the approach is not to go to a user and say, pay us. And if they say no, then we rush to the courts. We spend years trying to persuade and educate a music user. 2019 to 2023 is a long time. So it was only when we reached that point where we said, these guys are not taking us seriously and they are being arrogant and this is what we need to do. But fortunately, yesterday, they apologized. And you will see a press statement that we are releasing today, which is a joint statement between SAMPRA and Life and Brand Portfolio, where we have agreed on the licensing of Life and Brand Portfolio restaurants.
And then, Fanani, I must ask, can you prove that the money that restaurants will pay to you goes back to artists?
Yes, we can prove that. We get audited twice every year by the auditors that come from the Registrar of Copyright, which is housed within CITC. And we also get audited by our external auditors. That's number one. Secondly, we are the only collecting society in South Africa that is regulated. And the regulations are very clear that whatever money we collect, we should not, in terms of admin fee, our admin fee should not exceed 20% of whatever we have collected. We have proven that in the last 5-6 years that our admin cost is less than 20%. Or is a maximum of 20%, and a minimum of 80% gets distributed to record companies and artists. In the last 5 years, we have distributed in excess of 1.6 billion rands to artists, and that can be audited. It's there in our audited financial statements, and our audited financial statements are available on our website.
Fanani Leshiba, thank you, CEO of the South African Music Performance Rights Association. In a moment, some middle ground on this, if there is some. We'll speak to the entertainment lawyer, Nick Mudzikas. You with SAFM, 9 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's been quite a big crash in on Joburg's R24. This is the airport highway, the Albertina Sisulu highway. It's coming from the airport, driving to Joburg. All lanes are closed and traffic's backed all the way through towards the Barbara Road exit. It's a really big delay. If you're leaving the airport or coming into Joburg from Kempton Park, it'd be preferable to go south on the R21, hook into the N12 at Boksburg, and then take the N12 in through sort of Jet Park and Edenvale, Germiston, straight through to Galooly. The R21, N12, south and west will be a good alternative to avoid a major backlog. And I believe there may be some officials involved in this collision, so it's likely to be a problem for some time. Also, heads up if you're driving out to the airport on the R24, there is a bit of a delay, quite a heavy delay approaching that scene as well. So if you're airport bound for flight connections, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. N1 Malabongwe to Winnie Mandela is very slow on the northbound track. The N1 south through Centurion Midrand stays busy this morning. Old Joburg Road through to about the New Road exit. Durban side, the N2 going north, if you're on your way up towards the airport, that's all cleared up quite nicely through the roadworks, but there is a backlog now southbound from Umgena Road through towards Spaghetti Junction. Cape Town's N2 inbound, Langa through to Hospital Bend stays busy. N1 still static from N1 City. There's a lot of traffic this morning all the way through on the N1 to the elevated freeway, and behind that Marine Drive is quite heavily backed up through Pardon Island into the N1 queue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Some say, Emadoda ayipheleli. Others are saying, who acts ongasoveli? Black and white tackles gold and black in the DStv Premiership. This is the Soweto Derby, Mzansi's biggest football jamboree. Sazoshuba, Amapagania versus Amakhosi on Saturday, 9 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
6 minutes to 9, the time. Continue your mediated conversation around the royalties that need to be paid by restaurants for playing music. Nick Mudzikas is an entertainment lawyer. Nick, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
Well, there's clearly a dispute of some kind between these two groups. Certainly they seem to have a difficult relationship. How do you assess their cases? Does SAMPRA have a strong case here?
Yes, I think SAMPRA does. Our Copyright Act is pretty clear. Under Section 9 of the Copyright Act and under Section 5 of the Performers Protection Act, SAMPRA has, as an accredited, regulated CMO, the right to go and collect these royalties and distribute them in equal shares to the copyright holders, who are the record labels, and the performers who appeared on the sound recordings.
Would there be a criminal case here? I was intrigued by this, the idea that a police officer would have to go and say to a restaurant, you've been playing music. I mean, I don't know how that would really play out.
Yeah, look, there's no reason why a criminal case can't be brought. The fact of the matter is that, again, the Copyright Act, which is the source of all things that we refer to in these matters, makes it clear that it is both a civil wrong and damages can be sued for, and there are certain parameters there, but it is also a criminal act to breach copyright. So yes, and we're not the only country where that applies. This would be applicable in most Berne Convention countries throughout the world.
Has this been a problem in the past? I mean, I've never heard of tempers rising between the rights collecting organizations and restaurants. I mean, has something shifted in the industry that suddenly created the situation where we have this tension?
No, I don't think it's a shifting in the industry. What I think, and there have been several of these cases in the past. I mean, Foschini have been involved in a case with SAMPRA before, the National Association of Broadcasters. New Metro were quite recently involved in a case with SAMRO. What I think this talks to, more than any kind of shift in the landscape, is lack of education. And that lack of knowledge or education or understanding of how the music industry works has steadily gotten worse over the time. So I think the answer here lies in educating these users. They are understandably confused as to whom they're paying, why they are paying, what amounts they are paying, and what the amounts should be. And very often they will dig their heels in and say, I don't understand this. And I think this may well be the case in the current situation. I don't understand this, therefore I'm not paying until somebody explains it to me. And I think that, Fanani mentioned that there'd been discussions and there was going to be a resolution of this. And I think that resolution probably results from the fact that the user now understands these laws. Look, copyright and music law in South Africa are unnecessarily complex, but complex they are nonetheless for historical reasons. If one were to understand the bundle of rights that comes with copyright and the usages, then I would think these kind of conflicts would disappear. The basic, most fundamental understanding here is to appreciate that there is a difference between the copyright in the composition, which is the songwriting of the work, and the copyright in the sound recording, which is the recording of the work, or the master, as it's known. Now, when a piece of music is played in a restaurant, two copyrights are being used. The copyright in the composition, and that is regulated, collected, and distributed and paid by SAMRO for the public performance right. Then there is the public performance of the sound recording, and that is collected, distributed by SAMPRA. Now, these are just two usages in copyright. There are a whole lot of other usages as well, such as the reproduction right, which is controlled by an organization that was mentioned, Capasso. So if the retailer, for example, were making copies of the work as opposed to just streaming Spotify, they would have to pay Capasso as well. And there's also another organization called Risa Audiovisual, or RAV as it's known, which handles the dubbing right. The dubbing is the making of copies of sound recordings, just like Capasso regulates the making of copies of compositions. So the distinction between the composition and the sound recording has to be understood. And then the distinction between these various usages or rights of usages also has to be understood. And then the correct people will be paid the correct amounts. There's only so many dollars and rands to go around, and we understand that. But these rights exist nonetheless, and they have to be understood.
When you said it's complicated, you weren't kidding.
No.
If I play music in my car and I'm using a streaming service, only I can hear it. Well, depends on the mood that I'm in, but normally only I can hear it. If I decide to have a big gathering of friends and family at my house, and I have 20 or 30 people because we're winning the World Cup again, and I play music, that group of people, and if we win, the whole neighborhood can hear it. If I decide to have my wedding at my house and I have 500 people, it's still my house and I'm going to use my sound system to play my music to my friends. Aren't they lucky? At what point does it become entertainment and do I have to pay rights? If I had one person who wasn't friends or family, or if I charged someone at the gate, or if I charged for food, at what point do you have to pay rights?
Yeah. Look, technically, public performance is public performance, whether it's of the composition and or the sound recording. It is a public performance if it's a member of the public, in other words, not a member of your family that is resident in the home, then that is a public performance. I mean, a few years ago, SAMRO sent out a press release saying, listen, if you open your car door while you are playing the radio in the parking lot of a shopping center and one person walks by, you owe us money. Now, of course, that seems ludicrous, and they were taking a sort of extreme approach there to try and explain their position. But technically, in theoretical law, that is correct. And of course, this has to be tempered. And what it's tempered by is good common sense and practice. And what the CMOs do is they will say, look, the first question is money being made? Are they charging at the door? Are they charging for drinks? Is money being made because of the use of this music? If it is, then they are likely to pay you a visit. If it is not being made, they'll also apply a second touchstone and say, look, who was there? Was it just members of the home who were in attendance, or were there others there as well? And they'll use those practical touchstones. But theoretically, the Copyright Act is clear. One member of the public hears it, you owe a royalty.
Nick Mudzikas, thank you. Entertainment lawyer, really appreciate the time. Fernani Leshiba, CEO of the South African Music Performance Rights Association, SAMPRA. Wendy Ilberts is the CEO of the Restaurants Association of South Africa. You can listen to SAFM for free throughout the entire day. Feel free to blast it as loud as you like. From Melissa Mdu and Paul Stans and myself, look after yourself. You are with SAFM. Free to the nation. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thanks, Stephen. The top stories are how 2 people shot during the Durban Deep protests and the Joburg building fire inquiry to continue. A very good morning. 2 protesters have reportedly been shot during a protest by residents of Durban Deep on the west of Joburg this morning. The protesters were reportedly shot with rubber bullets by the police.